Part 2 of Bella Swan was the queen of the Volturi kings. Let's get into the video. None of the pack had ever participated in a sweat lodge before. With 8 shifters, Elder Yuli and Old Quill, the interior of the small cedar and animal hide structure was crowded, but the atmosphere was solemn. Old Quill had instructed everyone to fast the night before, to the young people's dismay. But the shaman was adamant that at least some cleansing and preparing needed to be done. Everyone was wearing comfortably loose clothing, and waiting in contemplative silence for the ceremony to begin. Old Quill called out his readiness, and the eastern-facing tent flap opened, admitting the first brilliant rays of the rising sun. Harry entered with a large, red-hot, swept stone held firmly between 2 forked sticks. He placed it as directed, returning with another and another until the shallow pit, around which they all sat, held 5 stones. He silently left the lodge, dropping the flap down once more. The stones cast an faint orange glow over the people inside. The shaman dipped a cedar bough into a bucket left by the door, and sprinkled the water onto the hot stones. Steam began to rise up as the stones hissed and spat. He repeated the process several more times, until even the dim visibility inside was obscured by vapor. We are here in this place, which represents the womb of the Earth Mother, to purify our hearts, our bodies, our minds and our souls. Our minds have been clouded with fear and hate. The elders have not carried on the sacred duties entrusted to us by our forebears. We have lost our way, and stumbled in the wilderness. Our young have not been taught to see beyond the physical aspect of a being. Their eyes have weakened and must be made strong once more. Our spirits must be cleansed of enmity, fear and ignorance. We ask the Great Spirit for wisdom and guidance. With that, Old Quill started a chant, a traditional Quileute prayer, thanking the spirits and ancestors for all they had, and asking for healing and peace. A pause hung in the air when he was done, and then he said, much more informally, if any of you cannot withstand the heat in here, you are free to leave when you will. Remember to speak your intention, and to move clockwise toward the entrance as you go. However, I urge you to make every effort to remain until our task is complete. The goal of the Sweat Lodge today is to speak our concerns to the listening spirits, and prepare ourselves to receive their guidance. The spirit walk will take place after we have left this place. He dipped the cedar bough in the water and passed it along to his left. One by one, the shifters sprinkled the fire, gathered their thoughts and spoke them out. There was no judgment in this place, and no one lashed out with angry words or insults. The words were halting, hard to come by, and disordered, but as the bough was rewet again and again, passed to every person in the tent. The burden these young ones had been carrying alone felt lighter. Lucas Yuli was the last to speak. Yesterday when you needed guidance and support, I allowed anger to overtake my thoughts. You came to the council, Jacob, to discuss something unknown to you. You sought the advice of the tribal elders, and I failed you. I feel ashamed that I, who should stand as an example to the young of the tribe, disrespected a bond held sacred to us. When we are through, Seth, I would like to meet your Jane. I am proud of each of you for speaking out here today. The spirits have heard your confusion, your doubt, and your concern. Sam Yuli, you hold shame and regret inside you. You speak of knowing in your heart of hearts that it was wrong to challenge Jacob, and yet, what other example did you have, but an angry, foolish old man? Where was your mentor, when you were alone and afraid? Who counseled you when you became a wolf and knew not what was happening? Who could you turn to, when an unknown force pulled you away from one you loved and directed you with a single-minded intensity toward another? The shame belongs to those who should not have left the burden of protecting the entire tribe to one man. One young man, not yet out of his teen years. A wolf never meant to be alpha, thrust into the role by necessity, and ill-prepared. The regret belongs to the elders. I hope you find your peace today, Sam. With that, the tent was silent once more. The heat from the rocks had almost left, and the steam was beginning to dissipate. Everyone was covered in sweat, but feeling clean and light within themselves. They still didn't have the answers they needed, but just talking in such a safe, healing place had worked wonders. Old Quill started to chant once more, a thanks to the spirits for listening, and a plea for their attendance when they were summoned once more today. Then he called out for the flap to be opened. Cold air rushed into the tent, as did the light of full day. One by one they exited, crawling clockwise out of the tent. Once outside, elders moved to a large barrel and splashed handfuls of the cold water over their sweat-stained bodies. Laughing, the wolves followed their example, realizing how refreshing it was, after being so hot for so long. The temperature change was drastic, but each breath felt clean and invigorating. Harry and Billy were standing outside, in front of the sacred fire. There was a pile that held towels for each of them, as well as clean, dry clothes. Leah ducked behind a bush to change, but the rest disregarded modesty, throwing off their soiled shorts and changing quickly. When everyone was dressed once more, Harry directed them to sit around the fire. Old Quill lit a bundle of sage, and when it was smoldering and smoking, acted the smoke 3 times toward his face and over his head with his hand. This was repeated around the circle, and then they were each handed a cup of tea. They drank in silence, staring at the flames of the fire. Jake blinked as he suddenly found himself at the top of an unfamiliar hill. The fir trees here grew tall, but he stood in the middle of a cleared area. Through the trees to the east he could see the Quileute River as it wandered beside La Push, and to the west he spotted the ocean stretching beyond the horizon. He saw the rest of the pack and the 2 elders materialize around him. This is Akalat, which has ever been a place of rest and refuge for our people. Jake spun around trying to locate the voice. Once, our people grew crops here, watched for whales here, and defended themselves here. Our great chiefs rest here. It is a place of great spirit energy. This is where you will find the answers you seek. A man walked out of the trees, the spirit of a great wolf walking with him. He radiated power, and knowledge lost to the ages shone in his eyes. Taha Aki, Old Quill acknowledged, bending his head slightly. Your presence honors us. Your people need counsel that the elders cannot provide. The Great Spirit heard your pleas, children of the wolf. I have been sent to help you find your purpose once more. It isn't about vampires, is it? Leah asked. If we were meant to kill them, we would never have been able to imprint on them. You have begun to open your heart to your mates, daughter. In doing so you are starting to realize that what lies within determines the true worth of a being. Understanding that you are ignorant is the first step in seeking wisdom. You all have taken that step. Why is the legend of you and the Cold Ones passed down to the protectors, then, if not to warn against vampires? Has it been told wrong? Paul Lahote, the legend tells the events of that day truly. What has been wrong is not the story, but the essence of the tale. The Cold Man had been taking the daughters of the Macaw for many years, and it nearly started a war between our tribes. My 3 oldest sons never returned the first time we looked for the culprit, and it took an other 2 years for Yaha Yuta and his remaining brothers to find the Cold Man. As Yaha Yuta's life force was leaving his body, I saw in his mind the evil of the Cold Man. He took only the females from the Macaw, and they were cruelly abused as he drained them of blood. He did not hunt to eat, he hunted for his own amusement. His soul was evil. The Cold Woman was like a rabid dog at the loss of her mate. Her true evil was not the vengeance she sought, but the joy evident in her countenance as she tore apart men, women and children. It was in the delight she took as the village streets grew darker and muddy with the spilled blood of her victims. The true enemy that day was not the vampire nature, it was the evil within. I had been a wolf for 200 years before the Cold Ones came, and a spirit warrior before that. Did I not have a purpose in my life before the vampires? Recall that I had put away my wolf for many years before that day. Was my life meaningless until then? You had purpose, great wolf. Jacob's voice was sure and strong. He was relieved to have his thoughts substantiated. You have always been a spirit warrior to defend our people. But you became a wolf when one of your own turned against you. When the evil in Utlapa's soul manifested in greed and lust for power, you saw it. Your body was vulnerable to him as a man, but as wolves we are much stronger. You are stronger, young Alpha, this is true. But there is always room for evil to taint the mind of those who do not listen to sage advice. To corrupt the heart of those who hear a truth and willingly stop their ears. Now, what questions do you have for me? What is going on with the vampire imprints? Why have 2 wolves imprinted on vampires? And from the same coven? More is happening here, Seth, than you could know. More than I know. An ancient evil stirs in this world, and the time for blind hate has long passed. The imprints were a catalyst for the change that has started to happen in the heart of your tribe. Be thankful your Alpha heard the wisdom of his ancestors. Be thankful his wolf spirit listened to the whisperings of his past lives. What do you mean, Taha Aki? Embry was curious. There were Tim. As he felt his wolf drawing on experience he had not gained in this life. The wolf spirits carried within you are the same as those carried within your forefathers. The wolves are not always called, not every spirit is called each time, with the exception of the Alpha. The wolf inside you, Jacob Black, is the same one you see here at my side. It takes time for the spirit wolf to reach its past incarnations. And sometimes the man is too prideful or fearful to heed his wolf. Taha Aki's eyes skimmed over to Sam and back. If you, Jacob, had not been the man you are, the tribe would have been decimated. Your wolf recognized the spirit of Utlapa influencing the thoughts of your pack, and was quick to act. Had the pack stayed the course, many lives would have been lost. The Quileute would they made powerful enemies at a time when it was necessary to make powerful friends. It could have spelled the doom of the world. Jake squirmed a little under the praise. He was still agog that he carried the same wolf spirit as Taha Aki. It was at once awe-inspiring and very, very humbling. I'm not sure I would have been the man I was if it weren't for Bella. Why does she have those vampires as mates? Why did we need to ally with them? The bond the three carry with Bella was ordained long ago. It is a thing as ancient as this approaching evil. The person she is has allowed you to become the person you are, Jacob. Fate has had a hand in laying this destiny before all of you. These vampires are the ones who will battle a force beyond your understanding. Had you made enemies with them, they would not have been able to focus as they should. Peace must be maintained. So this is like a political marriage, then, Leah scowled, I'm the princess married off to the prince of another country to avert crisis. That's what my imprint is. No, daughter, and yes. It was destined that your mating, along with Seth's, would precipitate a change, but fate made you for those two vampires and made them perfect for you. Unlike the typical imprint, neither yours nor Seth's is just about what they need. It is not about procreating or strength of the wolf. This union is about what you need as well. They are your reward, and you will find great joy. So that is what imprinting is for, then, Sam asked. To carry on the wolf gene. Is that not what all animal mating is? The strongest are chosen, those who avenue the best chance of producing and raising healthy offspring. That is the wolf part. And yet, you are also men. The imprint brings to you a mate whose temperament soothes and complements your own. Why, you and Leah could have been very happy together, if you were fully human, but the wolf can be volatile and aggressive. You would not do well together now. Your imprint allows you to be a wolf, with its quick temper and passion. As well as a kind, even-tempered man, a gentle father and a rational person. Leah's imprint and mine can't be about the next generation. Jane might be my imprint, but I don't think she's my mate. She doesn't act like Felix and Dimitri do with Leah. And what about the wolves that don't imprint? You are young, Seth, and do not need a mate yet. Remember that your Jane is what you need also. When the time comes that you and your wolf are ready to mate, Jane will accept you as her own. And while your imprints were specifically designed for the current situation, they also have a secondary purpose. Your mates are eternal, they will not tire of this world. So shall you be. Future shifters will not have to wander lost, unsure of themselves, the way this pack has. Your WOLF spirits will sense them and you will have the responsibility of guiding them in their purpose. And every one of you will imprint, in the right time. I will not tell you when or on whom, except to say this to you. Jacob Black, you have impressed the Great Spirit, and have been chosen to remain immortal on the mortal plane. You will know when the time is right to seek your own eternal mate. What of this ancient evil, Great Wolf? Lucas Yulee had said nothing thus far, allowing the pack to obtain the answers they sought. He was struck with how little he had known before, and allowed himself to again regret his previous actions. It is a thing of prophecy, from the time of the three ancient vampires. I do not have the information. Tell them to seek out the stories and teachings from their human time. Tell them to seek out the myths of their origins. Tell them, Jacob, that Bella was predestined for them, and to study the bond. It and their mate both carry great meaning, in everything they are. And tell them to prepare. With every resource available. Beware, the danger will come from an enemy unknown to them as such. Remember the lesson you have learned today. Remember that you are not designed for a specific enemy. Remember to guard against evil, and to shield your hearts and souls from hate and anger. Remember to pass on the wisdom of your ancestors, and not just the stories. Go now, protectors, in peace. Blank. Jake sat up and put a hand to his head. He had been slumped on the ground around the dying embers of the sacred fire. Around him he could see Old Quill, Lucas Yulee, and the pack stirring. He looked at the sky and noticed that it was early afternoon. His stomach felt as though it were gnawing through his backbone. A hand at his shoulder startled him. Charlie handed him some water, and Jake noticed that Harry, Billy, Sue, Kim and Emily had set up several folding tables with food and drink. As one, the pack lifted their noses to smell, and before another word was spoken, they were jostling each other for a place in line. Did it go well? Billy asked, when they were seated, eating ravenously. Did the spirits answer the call? Have you got the answers you were looking for? Jake grunted, nodding, yeah, Dad. I'm sure old Quill will fill you in later. Charlie, have you heard from Bella or the Kings? Bella's doctor removed the IV this morning. He should be discharging her in a couple of hours. They were going to take her to my house. Could you get them to come here instead? We need to talk. Jake swept the last of the food into his mouth and stood for more. He saw Billy frown, and Lucas Yulee draw him aside, whispering in his ear. Jake continued to pile food on his plate, and spoke again, Leah, when you are done eating, go find your mates. I'm sure you miss each other. Paul, Embry, you two will take patrol. I'll send someone to spell you later. Then Jake sat, and directed every bit of his attention to his food. Bella opened the bathroom door, and hobbled carefully into the hospital room. She hated crutches, always feeling as though she was going to slip and break another leg. If she had asked, she knew any one of her mates would have scooped her up in an instant. In fact, Arrow scowled at the crutches as though they had personally offended him, and hovered so closely she nearly trod on his toes. Tell me again, dearest. Why must we allow you to walk unassisted? Bella grinned and rolled her eyes. Because, Arrow, I need to be able to do a few things on my own. I've never relied on anyone and it will take some getting used to. I know you would happily carry me around for the rest of all time, but I like a little independence. A little privacy for my human moments and, for now, for getting showered and dressed. I am willing to watch you use those wretched things, as long as you remember to look to us for love and protection, even at the slightest unease, my darling. But, Keys frowned, the instant you look fatigued or uncomfortable. We will place you in our arms, where you belong. Bella leaned up and pecked his cheek. Let's get out of here. Will you carry my bag and the crutches? She sighed as she saw the orderly bring a wheelchair into the room. I have to sit in that thing until I'm out of the hospital. You can carry me to the car, if you want, Arrow. Arrow smiled, and as soon as they passed the sliding doors, he lifted her cradled in his arms, striding with ease toward the limousine. Alec opened the door for them, nodding to Bella when Arrow introduced them. Marcus entered the vehicle first, and then turned to receive Bella. Arrow carefully transferred her to his brother, who settled her on his lap, with her head against his shoulder and her casted leg across the seat. He stroked her hair and face, looking down at her with ruby eyes full of tenderness and wonder. Why do you look at me like that? Bella asked, after Arrow and Keys got in the limo and directed Alec to go. You all do. It makes me feel cherished and frightened all at the same time. You have always been, and will ever be, cherished by us, Amata, Marcus said. Why does it frighten you? Bella bit her lip, looking down and then back up at Marcus. It's overwhelming. You don't even know me, yet you look at me with more love than I've ever been able to imagine, even in my favorite books. What if, when you get to know me, I don't live up to your expectations? What if I disappoint you? That's what scares me, that you'll decide I'm not good enough, after all. Arrow growled, curse that stupid Cullen boy. You listen well, my mate. I will say this now, and repeat it every minute of every day for the rest of eternity, until you believe. You are a part of our soul. Not just our soul's mate, but a piece of us. Together, the four of us are one. You were made for us. Perfect to us in every way. We will never tire of you. We can never tire of you. The person you are will never be a disappointment to us. I saw you tell Jake about the Cullen boy. He was cruel and treated you as a plaything. A toy that he grew bored with. You are our soul, our mate, our reason to continue existing. As vital to our own lives as blood, and infinitely more precious. Do not doubt yourself, or our devotion to you. Bella's smile was wobbly as she tried to absorb the feeling of joy Arrow's words gave her. She reached for him, and was hauled gently into his lap. Chest to his and legs to one side. She lowered her lips and brushed them softly against his. Thank you, Arrow. I don't think you'll have to repeat yourself every minute, but I may need a reminder now and then. Arrow's eyes had darkened slightly at her affection, and when she finished speaking, he captured her in a kiss once more. His tongue lightly prodded her lips and as soon as she parted the he slipped into her mouth and smoothed her tongue with her own. Bella moaned at the new sensation and timidly touched her tongue to his, bringing her hands up to grasp his shoulders. Arrow reveled in his mate's taste as his tongue glided along the roof of her mouth and over her gums. Her moan shot straight to his groin and when he felt her hot tongue move to his and her arms embrace him, his manhood swelled with desire. He put his hands on either side of her face and lost himself in the sweetness of his mate. Bella's mind was a haze of longing, and she moved restlessly against the firm body in front of her. Her breasts grazed Arrow's chest, and she felt her nipples grow taut. A low growl in her ear had her shivering in response before another set of lips was upon her, nibbling at her neck and shoulders. She did not know which other of her mates was now skimming his hands down her back, pausing at her hips before daring to move to the junction of her thighs. She gasped into Arrow's mouth as she felt a hand, cool even through her yoga pants, press against her core. Her body gyrated of its own volition, pushing up into that hand, as she felt a gush of wetness escape her. Watching my brothers touch you, my mate, she heard Keys groan, is beauty and torture at the same time. Were we in Volterra and you not injured, you would find the three of us feasting upon the delights of your body. His words caused her desire to spike and she rolled her hips again. She knew now that it is Marcus whose hand continued to cup her center. She felt him stroke her lower lips until his fingers came to rest over her small bundle of nerves. He moved them in a small circle, and she let out a small cry at the thrill that shot through her body. Your body's response to us smells so good, beloved. Marcus whispered against her neck. Feeling you dance upon my fingers drives me wild with lust. I am eager to have you well in our bed. As are we all. Keys adjusted himself, hating to interrupt their passion, but I am afraid, brothers, that we have arrived at our destination. You must stop, so that we may all regain our composure. Arrow released Bella's mouth with a sigh of regret. Their mate looked utterly ravishing. Her face was flushed and her beautiful brown eyes wide and glazed with desire. She mewled, panting softly, still moving against Marcus's hand, while her heart raced. Shish, Bella, shish. Marcus gentled his movements before removing his hand and stroking his beloved's hair. We will continue this, my darling. Soon, very soon, I hope. He reached into a small fridge and took out a bottle of water. Opening it and holding it up to her. Here now, drink this. Bella's hands trembled as she reached for the bottle. Marcus held it steady as she tipped it up, feeling better when she had had a long drink. Her body throbbed, unfulfilled and frustrated. I thought we were going home, she grumbled. Why are we? She looked out the window, in La Push. Your father called while you were getting dressed, Arrow explained. The Quileutes have finished their spirit walk, and invited us to talk with them. Bella was passed out of the vehicle into Keys's arms. He lifted a brow at her, daring her to say something about being carried. And she stuck her tongue out at him. His eyes fixed upon her mouth, and the hunger in them made her swallow hard. Do not tempt me, mate, to carry you to the nearest bed. And slake my thirst upon the nectar your body spills in arousal. The time will come when you will use that tongue for my own pleasure, as I will use mine for yours. But that time is not now. And with that he walked into the council hall and sat with Bella in his lap. She could feel his hardness beneath her bottom, and closed her eyes to envision what she wanted to do with her tongue. And what she wanted him to do with his. Geez, Bella, so not the time, the female voice was mocking and amused. Unless you want every supernatural being in here to know that you've got your mind on getting some with your mates here. I suggest that you find your own chair and try to think unsexy things. Maybe think about Edward Cullen. From what I saw in Jake's mind, thinking about him is as good as a cold shower. Or walking in on your parents while they are going at it. Arrow and Marcus, who had walked in behind Keys, began to growl at the mention of Edward, but by the time Leah had finished speaking, they were choking with laughter. Bella opened her eyes at their mirth, and slid smiling into the chair next to Keys. You are Leah Clearwater, Arrow exclaimed. You and your brother, along with Jake, saved our mate. We owe you a great debt. A debt that can never be repaid. And now we find you are mated to two of our highest guards. My dear, I am delighted, absolutely delighted, to meet you at last. I would like to shake your hand. If you would refrain from biting my arm off. What? I won't bite. Leah held out her hand, looking wary and a bit confused. I suppose having one more guy know every detail in my head is no big deal. Arrow closed his eyes and absorbed Leah's thoughts. He was smiling when he opened them. You will be so very good for Felix and Dimitri. They need a strong female, and you are an exceptional woman. When you decide to give your loyalty, it takes a great deal to shake it. Your mates will be just as loyal, forever without end. Damn, Paul muttered to Sam, when the spirits want to let you know you've been wrong. They sure do present a hell of a lot of evidence. Being a wolf was so much easier when the danger was clear. I think we've been misled about the danger, Sam answered. None of these vampires have even looked sideways at any of the humans here. They certainly don't look like they're hungry. For anything but Bella, snorted Paul. He missed the glare Keys directed his way. Sam smacked Paul lightly upside the head. But, Sam went on, Bella told Jake how much trouble most of the Cullens had around human blood. All of them but the doc. And they fed often. Animal blood does not satisfy the thirst. Arrow and Marcus walked up to the two wolves. It sustains a vampire, but barely. It does not contain the same balance of nutrients that human blood does. A vampire hat exists solely on animal blood will always thirst, always crave. Add to that the Cullen family's youth, and it is no wonder that they slip. It is inevitable. I am Arrow, this is my brother Marcus. And sitting with Bella is our brother Keys. Keys looked up and nodded, then turned his attention back to where Bella was chatting with Leah. You and Marcus don't seem much older, Sam observed. Marcus laughed, a rich sound that had Bella looking up with a happy smile. Young in vampire years, my dear shifter. Carlisle is barely 350, and he is the oldest. Felix is the youngest among the vampires with us. And he will pass his 1000th vampire year very soon. Jake heard that as he walked in with Charlie and the elders. Seth and Jane had taken patrol, but the rest of the pack filed in behind them. They all gathered around Arrow and Marcus to hear more. Bella hobbled up to stand with them, patting her dad's arm on the way by. Keys stood behind her, encouraging her to lean against him. Paul goggled at the mention of Felix's age. So did Leah, looking over at her mates with awe. Ever tactful, she blurted out, just how old are you three? We have been vampires for over 3,000 years, young she-wolf. Arrow answered, our age is such that we do not need to feed more than once every 3 to 4 months. More frequently if we expend a lot of energy. Old Quill's voice was curious and respectful. Would you explain in greater detail? The only experience this tribe has had with human drinking vampires has been bloody and feral. Arrow acquiesced and began to elaborate. AVA. Empire's thirst is governed by a number of things, including age and physical activity. Newly turned vampires are often mindless and savage, their instincts drive them to feed several times a week. This is only partly from thirst. A new vampire will have difficulty focusing on anything for any length of time. The world is a barrage on their heightened senses, and without proper guidance the only way they find relief is by feeding frequently, fighting, or engaging in sexual pleasure. Each of these is a basic activity on which it is easy to focus. Vampires who are very active will also feed more frequently than those who are not. You can compare that to a human athlete who needs more food than the average person, because they use so much more energy. A nomadic vampire will nearly always need more to drink. And then there are gifts. Passive gifts, those abilities that cannot be shut down, do not take a great deal of vitality. Gifts that can be controlled or manipulated, however, do drain a vampire's energy. It depends on a number of factors, including how strong the gift is, its scope, and how hard it is to control. From what I know, the lifestyle Carlisle and his coven led is quite difficult for dealing with thirst. From the time he spent with us, I became convinced that Carlisle's success is due to a gift. He, of course, did not agree. He was very young, just a few decades into this existence. And still held many of the rigid beliefs that had been the mainstay of his human life. Their young age, active lives and constant use of gifts all work against them. Even if they were human drinkers they would feed more often. But combine that with a diet lacking nutrition and they will always be thirsty. Bella felt the vibrations in Keys's chest as he spoke, and closed her eyes, leaning more solidly against him. He held her securely, burying his face into her hair for a second and inhaling deeply before he continued where his brother had left off. Arrow and Carlisle had many conversations about his food choice when he stayed with us. Arrow wanted to study vampire feeding habits to gain a better understanding of why some ate more than others. But Carlisle was young and prideful. He could not be swayed from the belief that he was on a higher moral plane than the rest of us. That it was all a matter of will, and we simply disdained human life too much to try to change. He was with us a very short while, just 20 years, but his thoughts and experiences had such an impact on Arrow that he spent the next century researching vampire dietary needs. When science evolved the point that we could determine blood's makeup, we finally understood the entirety of it. Arrow even tried simulating some, but there is too much that cannot be duplicated in a lab, and too many outside influences in the process. It is worse than animal blood. So you kill people? Bella whispered. Yes and no, my young mate. Keys felt her body relaxing and growing heavy against his, so he gathered. her into his arms and laid her head on his chest. I will explain our feeding habits to you another time. Right now, lay still in my arms and sleep. I will keep you from harm. Jake watched Bella lay into the white-haired ancient's chest and close her eyes. He thanked the kings for the information, then turned to Arrow and offered his hand. I thought I'd show you the events of this morning. We were given a message to give to you. Arrow took Jake's hand and went silent. His expression was one of fascination as he replayed the conversation with Taha Aki. When the spirit warned them of the coming evil, his brow furrowed. Finally, he opened his eyes. You have a vampire mate, it seems, Alpha. When you find her I shall be pleased to meet her. The warning we will indeed take to heart. We must talk with you, Charlie. It is time to gather Victoria and take Bella home with us. Alice put a hand to her cracked cheek as she went sliding along the floor. How did you not see this before, Alice? She's their mate, the one we have long been awaiting. You should have seen this the moment she was born. The moment her mother first laid eyes upon her father. Not daring to rise from her position, Alice stammered, I am sorry, mistress. I did not know. I did not see her birth, nor any of her life until we met her in Forks. And besides the one vision of the Volturi with her at the hospital, Avenue seen nothing about her since a few weeks after we left. I think something is blocking her from my sight, and has been protecting her throughout her life. I can't think of any other reason for me not to have seen that she was their mate. She is the reason they stayed the course all these years. The reason my beautiful creations have been turned into human-caring lapdogs. We are meant to consume those pitiful mortal creatures. They are nothing but food to us, yet Marcus and the two he turned have civilized, the word was spat with a sneer, the vampire world. They must be brought down. Now they have found their mate. And she is the perfect tool. Destroy her and we will destroy them. Humans will learn that their rightful place is at our feet, baring their necks in willing sacrifice, or between our teeth, whimpering in fear. Mistress, I believe she is a shield, manifesting even in human form. Edward could not read her thoughts, something that has never happened before. The new voice seemed calm. But any vampire could hear the underlying nerves. And you left her unturned. In our hands she may have been useful. And when the time came that she met her mates, we would have her in our grasp. A powerful incentive for those three to allow us to reclaim dominion without opposition. You fools. I had hoped to have more time to allow her gift to mature before turning her, but Edward was having such trouble with her blood. I was afraid he would drain her before we ever got the chance. It took a lot of subtle persuasion to make him think she would be safer if we all left. His bloodlust nding Jasper over the edge was the push he needed. Alice saw in those first weeks how broken she was. We had planned on returning after the end of the school year, and collecting a more pliable creature then. That did not work, did it? Carlyle, the female hissed. That immature child you find so useful is more trouble than he's worth. I have tried on many occasions to have him tempted to our cause. I thought we could reveal ourselves to him during his period of rebellion, she scoffed, but that was short-lived and he has been unbearably guilt-ridden since. I should have insisted you destroy him long ago. And all those in your precious coven who show no sign of embracing our true selves. Having to meet with you two in secrecy angers me. Our appearance is a family of vampires who abstain from human blood and care for each other, and the humans allows me to foster valuable contacts. It enabled me to make a treaty with the spirit wolves of La Push several decades ago. I do not know if any of this generation have shifted, but I moved back there hoping that somehow our presence would cause them to change. I'm certain they will be valuable allies, once we tell them we are fighting the vicious human drinkers that lead this world. I care not for your schemes, Carlyle. That the girl manifested in human form at all means that she was already more than powerful enough and should have been turned. Do not let your greed lead you astray again, Carlyle. Either someone is useful immediately or they are not. Make so large a mistake again, and it will be your last. Blank. But Christmas is just a few days away. Can't you stay at least that long? While Charlie knew that he would have to allow Bella to go with these three, he was looking for any excuse he could to delay her departure. He wasn't ready to let her go yet, especially so far away. And she hasn't even graduated. She needs to finish school. He and the three brothers were still standing the council hall in La Push. Jake and the elders had stayed, as well as Leah with her mates, but the rest of the pack had gone home. Charlie looked at his daughter, still sleeping in Keys's arms. It seemed impossible that only yesterday morning she was wrapped in bandages and laying unconscious in the hospital. His eyes narrowed as he studied her injuries. The scabbing was leaving her face faster than he thought it should. And her bruises had already faded, even to his eyes. Is it just me, or does she look to be in better shape than she should? The question in Charlie's mind came from Jake, who had been silently studying his slumbering friend. Marcus's eyes took in the beauty that belonged to him and his brothers, and he lifted a hand to slowly brush the back of his fingers along a fading bruise on her cheek. We do not often find ourselves watching the healing process of a human, but it does appear that our Bella is mending more rapidly than normal. We will have a doctor examine her further when we get to Volterra. I must inform you of the spirit walk, and the warning we were given, brothers, Arrow began, looking at Bella and smiling slightly. I will wait for the entirety of it until we are on our way home. But I will tell you that the spirit of the first wolf, Taha Aki, said that everything that our bond is, everything that Bella is, carries meaning. There is an unknown evil looming before us. And we have a lot to do and discover so that we are ready to meet it. Yes, Charlie, Christmas is nearly here. I know you do not want to see your daughter go so soon. But I assure you it is necessary. We have left our world in very capable hands, but they are not our hands. We have duties that we cannot shirk. We also feel a great urgency to have our maid in our own territory, where we have greater resources to devote to her safety. The warning by the spirits is not to be taken lightly. We must begin immediately to prepare. We are chosen. Bella's drowsy murmur silenced the conversation. Keys glanced down, but his mate was still asleep. We are one, anointed to ensure the survival of the humans. We will prevail. She shifted in the arms that held her, and settled quietly once more. This young one seems to have prophetic dreams, Old Quill said. Jacob told us that she dreamed about you for weeks before you found each other. She knew there were 3 who had been seeking her. Attend her while she sleeps. The spirits may guide you through her dreams. Charlie was unsurprised by Old Quill's assessment. He had never met anyone else with such a firmly held belief in the validity of the spirit world. And the last few days had shown Charlie that the Quileute shaman had been right all along, and was probably right about Bella's dreams. He knew that they were often vivid, and even ones she could not remember had disrupted her nights on more than one occasion. Jake had said that she seemed intuitively aware of the supernatural world, and had easily discerned the secrets of both the Cullens and the Quileutes. We must leave tomorrow. Arrow saw that evening was approaching. He was pleased by how easy the heavy cloud cover in this area made being outside in the daytime. And with the short winter days, he didn't worry too much about having to get to the airport at a time when his mate should be asleep. Charlie, you are most welcome to come with us. For a short time, or forever. We will not cut you out of Bella's life. I thought any human who knows about vampires had to be killed or turned. Arrow chuckled. That would make life in Volterra quite difficult. Can you imagine if we were some mysterious group, never seen in the daylight hours? If we were always in robes, cult-like, frightening the citizens, pale, red-eyed, and inhumanly beautiful? That would do nothing but engender gossip and confusion. We enjoy a peaceful existence with the humans in the city. We do not flaunt ourselves, but most are aware of what we are. How is that possible? Lucas Yulie asked in disbelief. How is the secret kept? How is there no panic, knowing what you are and what you need to survive? I just can't see how that is possible. Marcus held up his hand to stop Arrow from continuing. These are questions that will be answered. But I know that Bella would be interested in the explanation as well. I do believe she will need to eat soon. We can discuss this after dinner. Sue has made food for everyone tonight. Please join us. Harry invited. We can eat and talk, if that is agreeable to you. Quite satisfactory. In light of the imprints, we must also discuss your children. Harry's mouth tightened as he nodded once. He knew where that conversation would lead, and he was not looking forward to Sue's reaction. Blank. The Clearwater house was crammed full. The vampires had seated themselves in the living room while everyone else ate. Seth and Jane had been called back for dinner, and the upcoming discussion about their future. Jake had observed that Bry was the most level-headed of the pack, and sent him out to patrol, since Alec had volunteered to replace his sister. Embry seemed quite in touch with his wolf, and showed neither the exuberant youthfulness of Quill, nor the residual mistrust of the others. Jake had asked him to be beta, and was pleased when the position was accepted. After dinner, Sue had served coffee and cake, and they joined the vampires in the other room. On the love seat, Leah was perched on Dimitri's lap, with Felix next to them. The Kings were on the couch, and Bella was being held by Marcus, with her legs across the other two. The elders and parents had brought their chairs in from the kitchen, and Jake, Seth and Jane lounged on the carpet. Arrow began the conversation, repeating what Bella had missed earlier. Wow, Bella opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. So nearly every adult in Volterra knows about you. That is so, Marcus confirmed. We have been settled there for centuries, employing humans for everything from cleaning the castle to doing our bookkeeping. Many of the jobs have been passed down from parent to child for many generations. Any who work directly for us are handsomely compensated. Those who do not still benefit from our presence. We frequent the merchants in the city, provide housing, sponsor charities, bring in tourists to increase revenue, and ensure that the infrastructure is maintained. When new technologies become available, we arrange to have them brought in. We subsidize the installation of modern sewage, electricity, the telephone, and internet. We also ensure that the citizens have access to the most advanced medical care. How do you know they won't tell? And what about new people moving to Volterra? Or if someone decides they want to leave? Everyone was content to let Bella continue to ask all the questions. We control the real estate and development in Volterra and the area surrounding it. We make sure that there is no housing available, nowhere for people to move to. We also keep an eye on the employment. If a job cannot be filled in-house, so to speak, we will carefully choose a person to suit. Arrow began fiddling with the ends of Bella's hair, watching the many different shades of color. And the variety of textures. He went on, his mind only partly on his words. We have a coven member, Heidi, whose gift is that of allure. She calls people to her, and they follow her. She brings tourists into the city. We show them around, encourage them to patronize the shops, eat at the restaurants, all the things tourists like to do. But Heidi will also look for a potential employee on her expeditions. Once they have visited us, my interview requires nothing more than a handshake to determine the worth of the individual. It is all very careful. Anyone may leave if they want to. Keyes continued, although most do not. Chelsea, who is also a member of our senior guard, has the ability to ensure loyalty. We use her gift to guarantee that no one speaks about vampires, even to each other. And even if they choose to leave the city, a parent will not even tell their child until their 21st birthday. Although it is a common misconception in our world that we use Chelsea to instill in our guard blind loyalty. Why don't the children know? Does Chelsea's gift not work on them? Chelsea's gift will work on anyone, except you, my mate. Marcus brushed her hair away from her face. But we would not do that to a child except in the most pressing circumstances. And no one may know until their 21st birthday because most young people have decided by that age whether or not they wish to stay in the city, or leave to pursue opportunity elsewhere. Also, we will not allow anyone younger to offer their blood to us. Keyes held up his hand and talked over the shocked exclamations of the Quileutes. It is a tradition, long held. The living donor always makes the decision on their own. There is no expectation and no coercion. There are currently about 200 people, out of nearly 5,000, who are willing to offer us fresh blood when we want it. We have guidelines. The person must be of sound mind, not pregnant or breastfeeding, and must have eaten and be feeling well that day. It is quite civilized. That's how you feed. Jake was incredulous. People just donate blood. Wait, I thought Jane said donated blood was disgusting. We do not collect the blood into bags. Alpha, it is either collected into a goblet, or the open wound is offered directly to us. In those cases, we are very careful with our venom. But that is not the only way we feed. Humans are susceptible to many painful and fatal illnesses and injuries. We will sometimes end a suffering life, if the person has ever accepted us so fully that their life's blood had been donated freely. Keyes halted, remembering some of the people whose pain he had ended. Those occasions are bittersweet, for the individual, the family, and for us. Then he grinned, and looked up. But do not forget we are vampires. And there is an animal inside us who enjoys chasing its prey. There are times when we go out into a large city, and find ourselves a fresh meal. He seemed to enjoy the snarls coming from the shifters, as they held themselves still at his comment. Marcus sighed at his brother's antics. Yes, we do sometimes hunt and kill humans, but Keyes neglected to mention we do try to stick to the less seemly of your race. We seek the criminal element. And we never eat children. There was an uncomfortable pause when the brothers were done speaking. Finally, Seth stood up. I want more cake. Anybody else? Leah looked at her brother and gave him a half-disgusted look. What the hell? Doesn't what they just told us bother you? Why should it? They need to eat, and they seem to be nicer about it than we are. Or have you suddenly become a vegetarian and I don't know about it? Seth's mild sarcasm, delivered with amusement, enraged Leah. She leapt to her feet. These are humans we're talking about. People who think and feel and know what is going on. Or are just walking down the street and bam, they wind up vampire food. Felix looked at her sharply, but Arrow shook his head at the large guard. The people in this room had to come to terms with this information on their own. People walking down the street with guns, or drugs, or scraped knuckles from when they beat someone for little reason. That is, if I understood what Marcus meant by less seemly. Bella looked at Marcus, who nodded. And why should it bother you that people give them blood? You said yourself they know what is going on. If they choose to do this, how is it different from donating to a hospital? I just think, Leah threw up her hands in defeat. It's just weird to think about. But you're right, even if it creeps me out. She glanced apologetically at her mates. I can't help but be a little creeped out. Felix sighed. Of course, you've had to make several major adjustments to your beliefs in just a couple of days. You will be more understanding when we arrive in Volterra and you see for yourself how we interact with the humans. You can't take Seth, Sue stated, taking a deep breath. He's only 14. You can't take him with you. I won't let you. She felt Harry put a hand on her shoulder and glared at him. I don't care what you say, Harry. Or you, Jake. You may be an elder in the Alpha. But I am his mother. He can't go. Harry looked into his wife's tear-filled eyes. He can't be away from his imprint, Sue. You know this. Then she can stay here. I won't lose them both at the same time. I won't. At least Leah is an adult. She'll be happy away from here. Seth is my baby. He is a protector, Sue, Jake said. He is your son, but he is a shapeshifter. The imprint has determined that his fate lies away from here. Marcus passed Bella to Arrow, and walked to Sue. He kneeled down in front of her and took both her hands in his, looking at her compassionately. Of course you do not want your child to be taken from you. It is a testament to the kind of mother that you are willing to defy each person in this room. I can see where Leah gets her fierce spirit. We will give you a choice. Sue looked at him warily. What choice? We will allow Jane to remain here for 2 weeks. You will have until just after the new year. After that, she is needed back in Volterra. She is a valuable part of our guard, and she is family. Seth must accompany her, and he is now family to us also. You have this choice. You may come to live in Volterra with us, or you may stay here. You will be allowed to visit, at our expense, whenever you want. We will send Seth and Jane back frequently. Think about this, Sue Clearwater. Your family will always be welcomed. Without you, we would not have our mate. And our guards would not have theirs. Sue nodded, as a few tears spilled over. She swiped them away and got up to gather the dishes. Seth got up, too, and wrapped his arms around her. They stood together a while, and then he whispered something in her ear. She laughed and smacked him lightly, then handed him the dishes. He took them to the kitchen and started filling the sink with soapy water. Jane watched the interaction with amusement. The other occupants of the room noted the fond smile on her face when she looked at Seth, standing in front of the sink, but she was not aware of it. She stood, and walked over to the young wolf, bumping him gently out of the way and beginning to wash the dishes herself. Household chores didn't change a lot through the ages. There always seemed to be dust, dishes and dirty clothes. Seth grabbed a dish towel and began to dry. He was quiet for a few minutes, and then he whispered so that only she could hear. If they stay here I will miss them. I'm already going to miss my friends, the pack, and the rest of my family on the res. But, Jane, I could never miss you. I could never miss you because I could never be apart from you. The absence of you would leave me hollow. I would die. I cannot live without you. It doesn't matter if you only tolerate me for the rest of all time. You are the reason I exist. Jane's hand rked in the water when he said he couldn't ever miss her, and resumed again as he went on. She had never had anyone hold that depth of feeling for her. She knew the Volturi was family. The masters were friends, and Arrow was as close to a father as she had ever had. Alec was her twin. They had been born on the same day, died on the same day, and were reborn by the same person on the same day. It was the closest bond she had ever experienced. Until this boy breathed words that told of a devotion she had only ever seen in the masters, bond with Bella. She was someone's entire world, and that was a hard thing to resist. Seth swallowed hard as his tiny imprint laid her head against his arm and closed her eyes. In the living room, Marcus watched their bond and smiled. They may not be ready for intimacy, but Jane had accepted her mate on this day. Do you think you will have any trouble catching her? Arrow looked at the 4 guards standing before him. It was pre-dawn and they were in the living room of the Swan house. Marcus was with Bella in her bed, holding her as she slept. It was a position Arrow desperately wanted to be in, but right now he and Keys would concentrate on securing their mate's safety. You know her gift allowed her to escape before. Yes, Master, it did. But we were not after her specifically then. If we had been, I would have hunted her down no matter where she went. She will not be allowed to run free now that we are focused upon her. Dimitri paused, thinking, she will not be expecting the Volturi to work with wolves. She would not have sent one of them to us with Laurent. Unless she thought we would kill Seth, and his whole pack. If Leah and Seth were to accompany us, staying out of sight, her gift may only sense the most obvious danger. At the very least, she will have 2 more hunters from whom she must flee. A sensible plan, Keys nodded. Is your mate ready to join us? Yes, Master. She has said her goodbyes and packed what little she has. Dimitri scowled when he remembered her meager belongings. Leah would not be wearing torn clothing and ragged dresses anymore. It mattered not how many times she shredded them from her body, she would always have something clean and new to don. We can retrieve her things when we go get her and Seth. Find Jacob. I believe he is on patrol tonight. I have a feeling he will want to join in. Then you and Seth can return to La Push in his vehicle, Jane. I want Victoria captured before noon. Yes, Master. Dimitri bowed and he and Jane disappeared. Blank. Bella sighed as she lay on the bed in the stateroom of the Volturi jet. Keys held her snug against him, her back pulled securely into his front. His nose was buried in her hair, as he breathed in her scent deeply. The shifters do not smell overly pleasant to me, although my guards tell me that their mates' scents are alluring to them. But they do not smell overly repugnant to me, either. I believe I will get used to it with time. But you, my mate, you I could breathe in unceasingly for the remainder of my existence, and I would never fail to find your scent utterly appealing. You are utterly appealing in every sense, my Bella. Marcus leaned down and pressed a kiss to her lips. She closed her eyes, turning her face more fully to him, and touching her tongue to his softly. The king's eyes had darkened with lust as he pulled back. He searched her face, and ran a hand down her cheek. Your bruises are nearly gone, beloved. We will visit a doctor as soon as we get to Volterra. If your bruises have healed so quickly, your leg may also be well faster than anticipated. He brought his mouth close to her ear, his chilled breath and heated words making her shiver, and then there will be no stopping us from carrying you to our quarters and consummating our union. Arrow watched from near the door as Bella blushed deeply and her heart sped up. He breathed in the perfume of her blossoming arousal, and smiled with delight. Thus far, their mate's reaction to the caresses they had shared had been all he could have hoped for. She was shy, but unashamed, full of passion and abandon. He could barely wait to join his body with hers, and to watch his brothers do the same. The sound of high-pitched fury preceded the guard's entrance to the plane. Leaving the stateroom, Arrow saw Victoria held firmly between Felix and Dimitri. The black-haired king lifted an eyebrow and addressed Alec as he and Leah boarded behind the taller vampires. Alec, why have you freed her from your gift? It was Leah who answered with a grin and a wicked glint in her eye. It was Jake's idea. He thought she might like to know why the Volturi and the wolves are allies. You should have seen her when she tried to run from your guards and found her escape cut off by Jacob. He got a bite or two in before Alec's gift caught up with her. She snorted with amusement. The shock on her face was priceless. Jake suggested that Alec release her before boarding so that she could see the cause of her imminent demise. I have done nothing. Let me go. I sent Laurent to you. You were supposed to kill these dogs, not make friends. The hysteria in Victoria's voice matched the madness gleaming in her eyes. Hate also burned in their crimson depths. Since when have the Volturi been so weak? Or have you started keeping pets? Let me go. Didn't La Urine tell you about the human they are protecting? I need to kill her. Rip her heart from her chest and feast upon it. Why have you captured me? Keys helped Bella off the bed and out of the stateroom. He held her closely, ready to pass her back to Marcus if the situation became dangerous for her. Her dry tone cut off the increasingly shrill demands from the redhead. I think it's because they like my heart in my chest. Beating for them. Hello Victoria. Looking for me. The shriek that followed her greeting could have shattered glass. Victoria's struggles increased, and Dimitri and Felix held her off the ground. Her legs kicked at them as she twisted and flailed, her fingers curled like claws, trying with all her might to lunge toward Bella. What is she doing here? She killed my mate. She knows about us. Let me kill her. Arrow's eyes narrowed and the fierceness in their blackened depths caused Victoria's tirade to halt. He smiled cruelly at her and with smooth malice he began, "Ah, Victoria. I see you know Bella. But I am quite certain you did not know she is our mate," he snarled, "and we will kill to see her safe. For the injury you inflicted on her, and on the shifters, you will join your coven mate, Laurent, as our guest. Until we decide to end your pitiful existence. Now, Alec, please ensure that this filth is quiet and allows us to enjoy the rest of our flight." "Yes, master." Alec had held his gift at the ready and now enveloped a newly shrieking Victoria in its numbing depths. The silence that followed was a relief to all. Arrow watched as Keys escorted Bella back to the bed to lay with her once more. Truthfully, she could likely have sat in the main cabin, but the three of them did not see any reason to stop holding her, and the bed was more comfortable for her. He turned back to Leah and his guards. "Everything is well with those we left?" he asked. "Yeah, it's all good." Leah grinned. "I don't know if Mom and Dad are going to leave the res, but they seem to like Jane. And they are talking about at least coming for a vacation in a month when Charlie moves to Italy. I can't believe he insisted on resigning properly and staying to train his replacement. The guy is too responsible, if you ask me." Felix shook his head, amusement and resignation on his face as he sat down. Dimitri merely took the she-wolf's hand and pulled her toward the cockpit. "Come on, Leah, I'll show you how to fly a plane. Blank. Bella would have to remember how literal her mates could be. Sending everyone but Dimitri and Renata on to the castle, the kings had indeed brought her directly to the hospital after arriving in Volterra. The orthopedic surgeon had been notified about their impending arrival and was there to meet them at the doors. Arrow and Marcus were filling the doctor in on her injuries, as Keys carried Bella toward diagnostic imaging. There were no glares here at his behavior. Instead, Bella saw mild curiosity and indulgent smiles, from men and women alike. She couldn't detect any fear, and a few of the staff even greeted the Volturi cheerfully. "Wow, it really is different from what I expected. But how is it that the vampire world doesn't have a problem with the way things are here? I mean, wouldn't some of them like a human or two to know also? Most of our kind are unaware of the way things are here." Keys told her in discreet tones. "The humans in this city do not speak of our kind, at all. They would not betray to an outsider, not by even a blink, that they have knowledge of our world. Most vampires who come here leave within a day or two. Those who do understand our ways are quite clearly reminded that we maintain a firm hand on the vampire world. They do not dare cross us. Those who Arrow sees are not trustworthy or either made loyal by Chelsea or turned to ash." He set her down on the table and hovered nearby as the technician took the necessary pictures. "Oh, okay then." Bella was a bit nonplussed at his casualness. Killing a vampire for knowing about the humans in Volterra seemed extreme, but she supposed whatever system the brothers had in place had worked for a long time. She would take the time to understand it before condemning their practices out of hand. When the scans were done, the surgeon escorted them to his office, and proceeded to look Bella over. He was gentle as he palpated her cheeks and head, checking for signs of damage. "Well, Arrow, if you had not told me, there is no way I would believe she had been in an accident ever." He shook his head. "There is no swelling, bruising, or tenderness anywhere, from what I can see. Her skin and the structures underneath are perfect. I suspect that the X-rays will show the cast is unnecessary." Arrow smiled brightly at the doctor. "Roberto, meet Bella, our mate. She is quite accident-prone. From what I have seen. You may see her again before her change." Bella tried to glare at him, but couldn't help the small giggle that spilled from her. It was true, after all. Arrow lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles before turning back to the doctor. "Bella, this is Roberto Baldassare. His family has been close to us since the time of his great-great-great-grandfather." The doctor was a tall, well-built and handsome man, just past his middle years, who greeted Bella with a friendly smile. He opened her file on the computer and looked at the images saved there. Bella watched his expression change from curiosity to astonishment. "How badly was your leg broken, do you know?" Bella felt Keys's arms tighten, though he was still gentle, and she stroked his arms to soothe his distress. "I'm not sure exactly, but the doctor said they thought about putting pins in. Or screws, or something. He figured I'd be in the cast for 8 weeks or more, and need a brace after that for a while. And physiotherapy." Why? Roberto glanced at the young woman, who was still being held by Keys. Although he had a healthy respect for these creatures, they had never made him feel like prey. He had been a regular donor for the Volturi since he came of age, and knew each of their temperaments well. He had never seen Marcus so animated, Keys so gentle, or Arrow so calm. This dark-haired beauty was a marvel. In so many ways. I will remove your cast today. You have no need of it. He got the saw out and made short work of the plaster. There is only the smallest indication on the scans that there was a break here, and no other damage to any of the surrounding tissues. You may walk out of here, if that is your wish. Keys put his mouth to her ear. Do not even think about it, Bella. I enjoy carrying you. She pulled away to look at him, then smiled as she whispered back. Plus, how weird would it be if I were to walk out of here, good as new, after everyone saw you carry me in with a cast? He felt her hot breath against his neck. I think you should carry me, Keys. It would be better. Then she caught his earlobe between her teeth in a quick, painless nip. Keys's body went rigid in an instant, his erection straining against his pants, and he surged to his feet in one swift movement. Bella yelped at the unexpected motion, and tightened her grip around his neck. Although his own hold on her never faltered. Goodbye, Roberto. I hope your family is well. Keys's tone was strained as he walked out of the room, his dark gaze never leaving the temptress in his arms. He heard his brother's somewhat more cordial farewells, and then they walked at a brisk human pace to catch up with him. There were times when the three wished they did not have to hide their abilities outside of their home. And this was definitely one of them. As they were pulling up to the castle, Arrow looked at his guards. I trust there is nothing that requires our urgent attention. When they confirmed that all was well, he went on. We are not to be disturbed. Unless fire and brimstone are raining down upon us, and we are all in danger of our final deaths, none of you will enter our quarters. Double the guards at all entrances. And on the dungeon, send the servants with her luggage and a snack for her immediately. Instruct them to set everything outside the door and leave. They are not to knock. He and his brothers exited the vehicle with Bella, and without another word, the three kings and their blushing mate disappeared. Blank, _ blank. Bella blinked and held Keys for balance as she was set down inside a large room. She started to look around, but her attention was diverted by cool hands turning her face up to look into black eyes. You have 45 minutes, my mate. Keys's tone was almost feral with lust, as he directed her to the bathroom with light pressure on the small of her back. We will give you that long to attend to your human needs and bathe, if you desire. Then we will finally finish what we started the day you first laid in my arms. We have been prepared for you for a very long time, and so everything you need is in there for you. 45 minutes. 1 second longer and we will come for you. Bella's mind fogged as her body responded to his obvious desire. She was so intent on him that she jumped a bit when she heard Arrow. Go on, dearest. He clapped his hand on Keys's shoulder and drew him back, handing her a black silk robe. You may put this on afterwards. We would have one for you, but we had no way of knowing your size. This will be too big for you. But you will not be wearing it for long. His grin was wicked. And we will all catch you if you trip. Bella took the robe with shaking hands and walked into the bathroom on unsteady legs. She closed the door and leaned back against it, trying to slow her breathing and heart rate. If her mates could get her so excited with a look and a few words, how would she ever survive what was going to happen next? She stumbled to the large garden tub and turned on the water, finding some scented salts and adding them as the tub began to fill. Hoping the noise of the water would cover her other human needs. She quickly used the toilet, then washed her hands and brushed her teeth. They really did have everything she needed. She had stripped down to climb in the tub when, all of a sudden the reality of the situation came crashing down upon her. In just under an hour, she was going to be naked in front of 3 vampires that she hadn't known a week ago. She looked at herself in the mirror. She saw circles under her eyes, and her hair hanging limply. She still hadn't gained back all the weight she'd lost in the last few months, and she thought her collarbone and hip bones jutted out a little too much. She cupped her breasts and was a little embarrassed when she got only a little more than a handful. She had always thought a 34C was a good size, but now it seemed woefully inadequate. Her mates had been around for thousands of years, and must have had other lovers. Vampire lovers. Vampire females. Beautiful, flawless, and indestructible. She wasn't beautiful, pretty enough for a human. But not vampire beautiful. She definitely wasn't flawless. She wasn't indestructible. One vampire male would have a hard enough time making love to her safely. Edward always 8. He could kill her if he lost control. How would she survive her 3 mates? How would she satisfy them? She was a virgin. The extent of her sexual experience had been gained in the last week, with these very males. And they were obviously quite eager to advance her sexual experience. Oh God, she needed to shave her legs. From the bedroom, Arrow, Marcus and Keys heard Bella's breathing and heart rate accelerate once more. They looked at each other with concern before they heard, "Oh God, I need to shave my legs," followed by a moan and what sounded like their mate hyperventilating. In the blink of an eye, they were in the bathroom. Looking at their mate where she was seated naked on the tile, with her arms wrapped around her bent knees, and her head buried between her arms. Marcus crouched beside her and ran his hand down her hair. "Bella," he said softly. Her head whipped up, and the panic in her face shone clearly as she squeaked and drew in on herself further, trying to shield as much of her nudity as she could. "Dearest, why do you panic so? We will not harm you. Take a deep breath, Bella, and hold it. Now release and do it again." Bella followed his instructions as his hand continued its soothing path from her head down her back. She remembered when he did the same thing in the hospital. They had been so gentle with her. They had never so much as caused her to wince, no matter how heated the moment was. Now that they were in the room, and Marcus's hand was soft on her skin, her panic receded and embarrassment set in. She felt foolish for overreacting. "Now, Amata, tell me what caused you to become so distraught. Did Keys's eagerness upset you?" "What?" Bella was startled, and raised her head to look for the white-haired vampire. He stood with Arrow near the door, concern evident in his features. No, he didn't upset me. It's just, she stuttered, and then swore beneath her breath before rushing on. "I'm just human. Your other lovers had to have been more beautiful than I am. I mean, look at me. I'm too skinny, and look like I haven't slept well in months, which I haven't, and my boobs are too small, and Edward always said that he couldn't be with me that way without killing me." She continued to rant over her mates. Low growls, "And I'm a virgin and there are 3 of you, and oh God it's going to hurt, and how can I satisfy one of you, let alone 3? I have no experience and you'll be unhappy with me and I have to shave my legs." She finished her one-breath tirade with a wail, burying her head in her knees once more before mumbling. "And then you come in and stroke my back and everything I'm worrying about seems silly and I feel like an idiot. But I still need to shave my legs." Marcus glanced up at Keys and Arrow. Keys looked mystified, and still upset at the mention of Edward. Arrow, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to laugh. Waving them both out of the bathroom, Marcus turned off the water, wrapped a large towel over his young mate, sat next to her on the floor, and pulled her into his lap. "Now, my darling," his voice was soft, but his tone was firm, "you are going to listen to me. Never have we ever seen a creature as beautiful as you. Human or vampire." He gave her a look that silenced her as she looked up once more and opened her mouth. "We have had lovers, you are correct. We 3 had companions for many centuries. They moved away shortly after you were born, but we are still friends. They are excited to meet you. But you are our mate, a part of our soul. We will never look upon another female with desire in our hearts, our minds, or our bodies again. Never. We cannot, and would not want to, even if we could. You list your defects as you see them, but neither I nor my brothers see anything but perfection. If you think I am placating you, then I will remind you that Dr. Baldassare used the word perfect after looking at you today. He was not just speaking medically. Your features have perfect symmetry. Your lips are full and beg to be kissed, your cheekbones are delicately arched, and your nose is exactly as it should be. Your eyes could melt a heart of stone, and drown its owner in their depths. Ask Keys if I speak the truth and he would completely agree. In 3,000 years he has never been as tender and caring as he is with you." He smiled as he heard Keys agree through the door. "Whether or not you have slept well doesn't matter. You will sleep well now, wrapped in the arms of those who love you, or we will change you and any effect your recent sleeplessness has had on your body will vanish. You have the body of a goddess, my mate, of Aphrodite herself. You worry that we will not find your body appealing and that you cannot satisfy us all. I will not try to convince you of your error. You will realize how very much you satisfy us when we 4 are laying replete upon the bed, sated to the very core of our beings. You will see, young one, how very much we will care for you. Regardless of the ramblings of that idiot son of Carlyle's, it is very possible for us to be with you physically. One at a time, or all at once. There is only one thing that is not possible. He waited until Bella's questioning gaze met his, and then he lowered his mouth to hers, kissing her softly and whispering against her lips. It is not possible for us to hurt you, beloved. The loss of your maidenhead may not be comfortable. But that is a fleeting pain, quickly replaced by pleasure. We will make certain of that. There is no need to be frightened, Bella. Not of us. Not ever. He pressed one more lingering kiss to her lips before standing and carrying her to the edge of the tub. She clutched the towel to herself as she watched him drain the cooling water. He turned the taps back on, and went to a cupboard. Removing an expensive-looking bottle, he poured it into the running water, and fragrant bubbles began to appear. This complements your scent, Amata. The other would overwhelm it. He opened several drawers before he found a razor and some cream. Setting them next to her, he smiled. Shave your legs, my Bella. Enjoy your bath as long as you want. Keys, for all his eagerness, will wait upon you. We all will. Whether you are ready to give yourself to us today or not, you are still our beloved. We would never intentionally cause you fear or panic. And we will demonstrate your worth to you. Every minute of every day for the rest of eternity, as Arrow told you before, until you realize for yourself how very precious you are. With that he left a much calmer Bella to her bath. Bella opened the bathroom door and entered the adjoining bedroom shyly. She held up the hem of the robe Arrow had given her, looking at her feet to make sure she didn't trip. She enjoyed the feeling of the fine silk as it slid along her body with each step she took. A movement next to her caused her to lift her eyes. Arrow was standing there, drinking in the sight of her, and beyond him a myriad of candles bathed the room in a soft glow. You are magnificent, dearest, he breathed, and held his hand out to her in a courtly gesture. Come, we have had some food and drink brought up for you. He led her to a table, around which Keys and Marcus reclined on long seats. This is the way we used to eat in our human years, Marcus explained when he saw her curious look. The practice of eating in a seated position did not come along until centuries later. Arrow helped her recline, and handed her a silver goblet. She took a sip, and closed her eyes as the unfamiliar and entirely pleasant taste of red wine washed over her tongue. Arrow lay on his own chair next to her and began to prepare a plate of various fruits and cheeses. While she waited, sipping the wine, she took a look around the room. The canopied, dark wooden bed that dominated the room was a work of art. Each of the posts was carved with ivy-shaped leaves, and sheer white silk drapery panels hung over the canopy and down to the bed. Bedding was the same deep green shown throughout the room, accented with gold. The whole thing was rich and sensual. The green and gold theme carried to the rest of the room. That's beautiful, she said, taking the plate from Arrow, and gesturing to the wall on either side of the bed. What does it mean? Arrow followed her gaze to the mural. That is our bond, the way Marcus sees it. We are the gold and you are the vine. As you can see, we are bound inextricably to each other, and to you. The bud is our mate bond. It was furled like that until we found you. Now that we are complete it has blossomed. Did you paint it? Bella asked in wonder. She had never dreamed that there would be such a transcendent representation of their soul bond. Keys's voice was oddly subdued as he spoke. I painted it. I have not seen the bond for myself, as my brothers have, but I created this from their descriptions. Arrow tells me that there is no way to accurately reproduce what they see, but this is the closest I have come. It took me many years. I will be painting the blossom soon, of course. Keys, Bella sighed, it's amazing. It takes my breath away. She placed her cup and nearly empty plate on the table, and got up to walk over to him. She held out her hand, and he took it, allowing her to draw him to his feet. Sliding her arms around his waist, she laid her cheek against his chest and whispered, I'm sorry I freaked out. I saw how worried you all looked. I didn't mean to ruin the mood. You have ruined nothing, my sweet darling. I am so eager for you that I forget sometimes how very innocent you are. You are cherished by us, Bella, and we will show you great love and tenderness. Arrow drew her away from Keys, tilting her head up for a lingering kiss. You could never ruin the mood, Bella. The desire we feel for you is everlasting. Today, or 1,000 years from now, we will want you. In our bed and in our lives. Will you give yourself to us this day? Bella looked into Arrow's deep crimson eyes, then Keys's and Marcus's. The lust that had overwhelmed her before was still there, but it was a mere ember when compared to the love that blazed in each of them. In that instant, all hesitance was gone. All her fears disappeared. She was still shy, still a little nervous about the enormity of this action, but there was no panic, only anticipation. Bella turned her back on her mates and walked slowly to the bed. She ran her hand down the white silk panels, and then looked over her shoulder at the three vampires with a wicked smile. Very deliberately, she loosened the tie on the robe, allowing it to catch on the tips of her breasts, held up in the crook of her arms. Before she could blink, her mates were standing with her. Marcus pressed himself against her back, pulling her hair away from her neck and placing hot kisses to her bare shoulder. Bella gasped as his cool tongue licked her smooth skin, and she felt him nibble and suck at the juncture where her pulse beat strongly. Keys's lips met hers and his tongue invaded her mouth to wrap itself around hers. His hands grasped her hips then slid up her body. He pushed the robe aside and she moaned as his hands covered her breasts, caressing the soft globes. He flicked his thumbs across her nipples, drawing another moan and a shudder from her, and causing a rush of arousal between her legs. Her hands slid up into his hair, as she lost herself in the kiss. "You are beautiful, my mate. Exquisite." Arrow watched his brothers make love to Bella, his eyes black with need. He removed his shirt and loosened the button on his pants, relieving some of the aching pressure on his erection. "Lay her down upon the bed, brothers, so that I may join you." Marcus backed away, and Keys lifted Bella in his arms, the robe falling to the floor. Bella colored as she realized she was completely naked, but her unease was fleeting. She felt the soft, cool silk of the bed beneath her as Keys lay her down, hovering over her. Once again he took her mouth with his. Before standing up, she had a second to watch as he and Marcus shed their shirts, before Arrow took his place, kissing her with as much ardor as he had in the limousine days ago. The tips of her breasts grazed his smooth chest, pebbling with sensation, and her entire being thrummed with passion. Arrow inhaled as his mate reacted to his touch. He could smell the sweetness of the dew collecting at her core. And it pleased him that her body was preparing to receive them. He trailed his mouth down her figure, stopping to draw a nipple into his mouth. Bella cried out as he suckled, clutching at the bedding and arching up in surprise. An electric tingle worked through her body from his mouth. She rubbed her thighs together, needing something more, but not knowing how to find it. Arrow felt her movements and smiled. He released her breast, only to have Marcus take his place, his hand stroking smooth circles on her stomach. Keys claimed her mouth, and brushed her other nipple with his fingers, pinching and pulling gently, causing waves of sensation to nearly overcome his mate. Arrow glided farther down Bella's body, noticing with pleasure that she had used the razor on more than just her legs. He ran his hands along her smooth mound. "Brothers," he uttered softly, his cool breath wafting over her clit and lower lips, "she has bared herself for us. Look at the beauty that the gods have chosen for us." Bella found no room for a blush in the haze of need clouding her mind. She whimpered as Marcus and Keys stopped their ministrations and stared at her nudity. Their hands smoothed over her bare flesh, and she bucked her hips when fingers softly stroked her labia and grazed her tight bundle of nerves. "Beauty beyond words," Keys murmured, and resumed devouring her mouth. She heard Marcus agree and felt him at her breast once more. Arrow continued to caress her bare folds, and then lowered his mouth to her core. He ran his tongue through her slit, and when he reached her sensitive button, he flicked his tongue against it. Bella gasped, pushing up towards his mouth as she reached for him, only to encounter Marcus and Keys in her way. Keys caught her hand, and began to lavish kisses upon it. Continuing up her arm, he lingered at her pulse points, her delicate wrist, the inside of her elbow, and the translucent, sensitive skin of her upper arm. Her other hand caught in Marcus's hair. She ran her fingers down its length, grabbing a handful tightly as he continued to nibble along her stomach, ribs, neck and breasts. There was no part of her body that didn't quiver with need. She whimpered, writhing against the bed, twisting and pushing into Arrow's touch. "Oh, oh, she cried out. Arrow sucked her swollen butt into his mouth, grazing her flesh with his teeth. He ran his fingers along her folds, slick with moisture, and dipped between them to insert his finger gently. Bella felt the intrusion through the fog of lust. It felt strange, but not uncomfortable. She felt Arrow begin to thrust slowly, and could not control the synchronous movement of her pelvis. Marcus and Keys raised their heads to watch as Arrow slipped another finger into Bella. There was a flash of discomfort on her face, replaced so quickly by her mounting need that, even as vampires, they almost missed it. Oh, God, that feels good. Bella's head was thrown back and she too. Okay, her arms from Keys and Marcus to finally reach Arrow. Her fingers tangled in his hair as she held him to her, rocking up against his mouth and fingers. His tongue continued its vibrations on her swollen clit. Her heart beat quickly and she panted with the rhythm of her undulating hips. Arrow felt the walls of his mate's flesh begin to constrict around him, and curled his fingers in a beckoning motion. Bella's eyes popped open in surprise, and her thighs clamped tightly around his head. She ground herself into his face and hand, deep, shuddering breaths escaping her, inner muscles tightening and releasing her juices in sated gush. Arrow caught the essence of his lover on his tongue in one quick sweep. He could have feasted on her all night, but he knew that it would be better if her body's moisture remained. He glanced up at his brothers as Bella came down from her high. They shared a look and he untangled himself, running his hands down her soft, smooth thighs. Bella felt Arrow leave her as her breath and heart rate returned to normal. She had tried to masturbate a couple of times, after Edward had once again refused her, but had never been able to bring herself to orgasm. Her eyes were full of wonder and satisfaction, yet her body seemed to know that she was still incomplete. Small whines escaped her throat, and her pelvis continued to move in small thrusts. She frowned as she saw her three mates with their pants still on. "I need you," she moaned. "I want to see you." She sat up, and finding herself closest to Marcus, tugged on his waistband. He buried one hand in her hair, tilting her face up to him. And with the other he unbuttoned his pants. He leaned down to kiss her, released her hair, and then pulled her to sit on the edge of the bed as he stood in front of her. Taking her hands, he placed them at his hips. "You are welcome to see, and touch, and taste, my beautiful Bella. My body belongs only to you." Bella smiled shyly as she pushed Marcus's pants and underwear down, allowing his hardened member to spring free. She paused and looked up at Marcus with wide eyes, before slowly wrapping her hand around his length. "It's so smooth, satiny." She ran her hand down and then back up, marveling at the texture. Her fingers brushed over the darkened head, catching a liquid drop at the tip. She had seen pictures in sex ed classes, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. She didn't know whether or not Marcus would be considered large, but he seemed big enough for her. She stroked her hand down to the base and back once more, and heard Marcus groan above her. She looked up at him curiously and smiled more confidently at his expression. "Dear gods, have mercy." His mouth fell open as his black eyes stared intently at her. Bella began to push and pull his erection, experimenting with the pressure of her grip and the movement of her hands. She tried straight strokes, and twisting strokes, sometimes rubbing her thumb or fingers over the tip and sometimes not. Marcus's hand came up into her hair once more, and he held on as though she were a lifeline. Bella lifted her other hand to the soft sac at the base of his penis, feeling the weight and texture, rollin' and squeezing his testicles in exploration. Marcus muttered an oath in a language Bella did not understand, before stilling her hands with his. "You must stop, beloved, before I spill into your hands." Bella looked at her hands and lifted fingers that were damp with his precum to her lips. She licked at them tentatively and surprise lit her features. "I wouldn't mind if you did, Marcus," she informed her mate mischievously. "You taste different than I've heard guys do. Sweeter, better." She sucked at her fingers again and hummed in pleasure. She was so intent upon Marcus that she gasped when she heard Keys's dark voice sound in her ear. "It is the venom in our bodies, my mate. It makes our bodies sweet. We have been designed to please you in every way." He captured her earlobe between his teeth, much like she had done to him earlier, and she felt a shiver race up her body. Pulling her to her feet, Keys took her mouth in a gentle kiss before looking deeply into her eyes. "Will you allow me into your body, Bella? Will you allow me to worship you in your body with mine?" In that moment, Bella could almost feel the depth of devotion Keys had for her. She almost understood what she meant to these three brothers, that she was the gift that they had spent hundreds of years waiting for. Tears filled her eyes as her heart swelled with love, and her smile was wide and happy. "Yes, Keys, I will not just allow you into my body. I will welcome you with an open heart. Make love to me, my mate. Show me the love I see in your eyes. Love that I feel for you also. Love that I feel for Marcus, and for Arrow. My mates. I am yours." Keys laughed and swept Bella up in his arms, hugging her tightly to his frame, kissing her cheeks, her eyes, and even her nose. "My mate. My Bella, I will show you how very much I love you. I am yours every bit as much as you are mine." Arrow plucked her from Keys's arms, kissing her fiercely. She worried for a second that he would hold her too tightly, but it really did seem like it was impossible for them to hurt her. He drew back with a light laugh at her breathlessness, eyes alight with joy. "Dearest, my darling Bella. I will add my love to yours and Keys's. I love you, mate. I have loved you for an eternity and will love you for an eternity more. Until the sky falls into the oceans and darkness consumes us all." Even beyond that, you will always have my love. And mine, beloved, Marcus said, drawing her away from Arrow gently. His kiss was soft, lingering and sweet, with just an edge of desperate hunger. My love for you is only matched by that of my brothers. You are, and always will be, our precious one. Our reason for all that we are and all that we do. Bella couldn't contain her tears as Marcus passed her gently back to Keys. That's not true, Marcus, she managed to whisper. Your love for me is also matched by my love for you three. How can it not be, when everything within me longs for everything within you? Keys lifted her in his arms and carried her back to the bed. He laid her down in the very center. She watched as he and Arrow quickly divested themselves of the rest of their clothing, and leaned up on her elbows to look at them. Keys's cock was the longest and slimmest of the three brothers. Arrow and Marcus were similar lengthwise, although Arrow was much thicker. Bella was intrigued by the differences, and wanted desperately to touch her mates. She started to arise, but was stopped by Keys settling himself between her thighs. He brushed a stray lock of hair away from her face, then held the back of her head while he feasted on her mouth. You are so beautiful, my mate. So beautiful. His hand brushed down her side, grazing her breast and continuing its path until he reached her legs. Hooking a hand under her knee, he brought her leg up over his hip. Pushing forward with his hips. Bella's breath caught in her throat as she felt Keys's erection slip through her wet folds, its tip rubbing against her clit. Pleased with her reaction, Keys drew back and repeated the motion, feeling and sensing his mate's increased arousal once more. Holding her leg over his hip and her core open, he continued to thrust against her, while kissing her until she moaned into his mouth, rocking back against him. Positioning himself at her entrance, Keys looked at Bella. It is time, sweet darling. I will try to make the pain fleeting. He began to enter her. Slowly at first, watching for any sign of pain. You are so hot around me, my mate. So tight, so smooth. Bella whimpered and frowned a little as Keys continued to push forward. The sensation of being stretched and filled was uncomfortable, but not painful. Her body was slick with moisture, and more than ready to accommodate her mates. She tilted her hips up, wrapping her legs around Keys and trying to draw him in farther. Frustrated when she could not manage it, Bella finally whined, more, Keys. I want more of you. Please, it's okay, it doesn't hurt. It's weird, a little uncomfortable. But I'm getting used to it. I just want all of you. Keys growled deep in his throat, showing venom-coated fangs to Bella for the first time since they'd met. He felt the rush of arousal that was her response, and surged forward with one hard thrust. Bella cried out in surprise as she felt Keys's sack hit her bottom. Oh my god, you feel amazing. She closed her eyes and reveled in the sensation as he pulled out and thrust once more. Keys sat back on his heels, lifting his mate's hips up and thrusting into her hard, over and over. He exulted in every gasp, every moan, every cry that fell from her lips. As her hands grabbed and twisted at the bedding, Marcus and Arrow climbed onto the bed, lying next to her, and smoothing their hands and their lips repeatedly over her body. Their other hands were stroking their cocks, pleasuring themselves over the sight of their mate's lustful abandon. Keys felt his release approaching, and was astonished when he leaned down and sank his teeth into his mate's left breast just as he shot his seed inside of her. He let go with a venom-coated lick, and watched amazed as his brothers sank their teeth into either side of Bella's neck as they spilled their seed over the soft skin of her breasts and stomach. Bella felt Keys bite her and she cried out, her orgasm washing over her in wave after wave of undiluted sensation. She felt the other two sets of teeth just as she thought she could take no more, and she saw lights burst behind her eyes, the brightness blinding even her mind, before everything faded into darkness. K.U.S. laid Bella down on the bed in the stateroom. He shut the partition, closing away the sight of Victoria sitting slack under Alec's gift. He wasn't quite sure what he was going to do with her or Laurent yet. But he'd always been an inventive sort. Maybe he would see if he could chisel vampire flesh as he would a block of marble or granite. One part of his mind stayed on this train of thought. He considered various shapes he could make from vampire parts. He'd burn the arms and legs, of course, so that they could not escape, but he could imagine setting their heads on a shelf, so that they could appreciate his art. He wondered if he could rip away the dead organs and make an urn from a vampire torso. Maybe he could fill it with flowers for his Bella. He wondered how long he could play with them before insanity decreased their pain and his amusement. However, the majority of his brain was occupied with his mate. She was on her side, facing him, one arm under her head and the other resting on her hip, just above her casted leg. She was staring at him silently, and he took the time to stare back. She was a beauty, this maid of theirs. Her hair was long and thick, hanging in loose waves halfway down her back. He was sure that most people would call its color brown, but it was so much more than that. He could pick out individual strands of blue-black, mahogany, auburn, chocolate and blonde. He reached out a hand and combed his fingers through her hair, brushing back from her face, tracing the shape of her skull, sliding gently over her neck and down her back. Each strand he touched had a different texture, and he reveled in the variety he could feel with just one touch. Bella shivered and closed her eyes, letting out a sigh of bliss. There was something so soothing about having her hair petted, and her mates constantly seemed to be touching it. She opened her eyes again and smiled at her white-haired mate. He had been so gentle with her, but she had detected the underlying brusqueness and impatience when he dealt with the hospital staff, and some of the other wolves. She suspected that he was every bit as dangerous as Carlyle had told her. But it was impossible for her to be afraid of any of her mates. Keys did not look away from his mate when her eyes closed. He skimmed the delicate bones of her face, once more noting the diminished bruising. Her eyes opened, and when she smiled at him, he couldn't help marveling again at their perfection. The deep brown of her irises started at her pupil and radiated outwards like a starburst. Keys could see each time the shade lightened, until at the very edges she had smatterings of gold and deep green, just like the bond. Marcus had confirmed that when Keys had mentioned it earlier. Keys, Bella's soft voice finally cut the silence. Do the Volturi celebrate Christmas? Keys snorted. You will learn, my darling, that with Arrow around, we are not able to ignore a holiday that humans enjoy so much. He infects the coven with good cheer every December. I do not get involved, but there are several of the Volturi who enjoy it every bit as much as Arrow. Arrow slid open the partition and grinned at Bella. Keys is our resident Grinch, my dear. He chuckled when Keys snarled lightly at him and retreated to the main cabin. He wasted no time in taking Keys' spot next to their mate. When the humans here began celebrating Christmas, we also began to enjoy the holiday. The exterior of the castle is decorated, and we provide the light displays throughout the town. Felix has a very fun time pretending to be Santa Claus. Heidi and Chelsea do the shopping, nothing extravagant, and he actually does visit every house with a young child to leave the gifts. Bella giggled, and then laughed outright when she heard Felix's, ho, 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 resound through the aircraft. Does he go down the chimneys in a red suit, and eat the cookies and milk? Arrow laughed with her. He has a red suit, shiny buckle and all, and the parents usually leave a way in for him. An unlocked window or door, or maybe a key that has been sent for jolly old street. Felix, I believe he has a ring of them that he keeps until he stops visiting that house. And no milk and cookies. I don't think even he would go that far. Bella smiled again and shook her head in mild disbelief. The Cullens had always had a supercilious view of their own superiority over other vampires. They held themselves to be more humane and compassionate than any other creature in their world. But Bella had never seen Alice spend any money on anyone she didn't think was her equal. She had never seen them treat anyone at school with any sort of real kindness, and Jacob had made her agree that at least half of them were not actually kind to her, either. What am I going to do about school, Arrow? I am so close to graduating. It seems like a waste to stop now, but I know I can't go back to Forks and finish there. Arrow sighed. If not for the warning of the spirits, you could go back to Forks. Although at least one of us would always be with you. Now that the threat to your life has been apprehended, at least. But after the spirit walk, we will not let you out of our sight until we are assured the danger, whatever it is, has passed. So then, what? I would like to at least finish high school, and I'm sure Charlie would like it if I finished, also. We will tutor you, if you'd like. I assure you that you will get a far greater education from us anyway. You have examinations to take. At Bella's nod, he continued, we will make arrangements with the secondary school in Volterra for you to take them there. A semester abroad, isn't that what it's called? We can also arrange a human tutor, if that is your preference. Unfortunately, we simply cannot allow you to attend the school. From now on, you will be accompanied at all times, if not by us, then by the guard. That seems like a pain in the butt for you guys. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. As nice as they had all been so far. Bella wasn't sure that the guards would enjoy spending their hours watching her sleep, or slowing themselves to meet her human pace. Bella jumped as Keys returned to her with lightning speed. He bent over Arrow to take her face lightly between his hands. His touch was gentle, but his voice was full of playful menace as he warned, "Do not think of yourself with such little regard again, mate. Your worth to us is beyond measure, and we will safeguard your life with the last drop of our venom." Bella could not help the shiver of arousal he inspired in her. She sensed that if she continued to protest, the lightness would disappear from his voice, and she might very well be relegated to a life lived from the safety of his arms. She chose instead to turn her head and place a kiss into his palm, nodding once. Satisfied, he returned to his seat, turning the lights down and closing the divider as he left. Bella gave a wry grin. She hadn't realized she was tired until Keys took it upon himself to subtly announce nap time. She closed her eyes. "Arrow, would you tell me more about your gifts?" "Of course, dearest," was the reply. She fell asleep to the soothing rhythm of his voice. The kings returned to awareness quickly. Arrow and Marcus licking closed the bite marks they had made. The three ancients looked at each other in panic, then at their unconscious mate, where she lay surrounded by them. "What did we do, brothers?" Arrow was horrified and confused. "I know we were going to turn her, but we hadn't even talked about it with her yet. I had no control, Arrow. I don't know what happened." Marcus, "Does the bond say anything?" "It does not, brothers, yet I could not control it, either." He looked down at his mate. He could not regret changing Bella, but they had meant to speak with her first. Frowning thoughtfully, he continued, "But look, brothers. Listen, her heart does not beat faster, she does not cry out with pain, and her face is as peaceful as if she were sleeping." Keys wah, tched his mate from where he was still nestled between her thighs. Marcus was right, she did not act as though she was burning. He didn't understand why she was not screaming as the venom stripped away her human self. They needed to discuss this further and let the coven know their mate was changing. Blood would need to be procured, and arrangements made for their treasured newborn mate. The three brothers sighed as one, and started to remove themselves from their beloved's warmth. They had barely shifted when Bella's drowsy voice stopped them. "Don't go, I'm comfortable, just stay here with me." Her words dropped off to a mumble that the kings strained to hear. "Plus I still want Marcus and Arrow." The vampires looked at each other, completely bemused. Not only did Bella not appear to be in pain, but she was seemingly lucid. "What is happening, Marcus?" Arrow was deeply concerned. "I have seen in Jake's mind the story of when she was bitten. She felt the burn of that venom before it was removed. Why is she not burning now? Is it possible for her to have gained an immunity to venom? Will we even be able to change her? If that is the case, then what is happening to her now? Why is she not awake?" Keys was panicked at the thought of losing his mate to mortality when they had just found her. "Shish, Keys. Be calm," Bella's sleepy voice cut through her mate's growing unease. "Be calm, Arrow. Be calm, Marcus. All will be well." Bella fell silent with a sigh of one in deep slumber. Her heart rate and breathing were the rhythmic measure of sleep. Even her eyes danced beneath their lids as though she dreamt. Yet her words showed awareness of the turmoil within her mates. The kings studied the beauty laying with them and then looked back at each other. Keys finally withdrew from Bella's hot center, rolling onto his back with his mate still held firmly in his arms. Marcus and Arrow adjusted their positions with the movement, so that they once more ended on either side of their mate, each with a hand on her naked back. Bella hummed a low sound of contentment against Keys's chest, and then quieted once more. Arrow finally spoke. "There is more happening than we know, brothers. The warning of the Quileute spirits cannot be taken lightly. Taha Aki spoke of our bond as a thing preordained since the moment you became a vampire, Marcus. Perhaps even before that. You never knew your maker, and haven't you never been able to glimpse even a hint of him, or her, in your mind? We must trust that the gods have a plan for our Bella. Maybe she is meant to change this way. Maybe she burned before because he was not meant to be tainted with venom that did not belong to her mates. We will have to wait for the outcome of this situation to reveal itself. In the meantime, if she wants us to remain, then we will remain. And I will watch the bond closely and inform you if I see the slightest change." Marcus stated. To his gift, his mate looked as she had in the hospital, complete with the floral diadem and ethereal golden glow. It had not changed, he could lose himself in its beauty. Keys pulled a fistful of Bella's hair toward his face, breathing deeply. Her scent soothed him, as it had from the first. Spring violets and frankincense. He closed his eyes and willed away his panic, choosing to trust his mate's assertions that she was well. Arrow propped himself up on one elbow, his other hand still skimming down his darling's back. He spared a second to check his brothers' minds, before resuming his intent watch over his mate. He tuned his ear to her breathing and heart rate, and ran his eyes unceasingly over every inch of her body bared to him. He would not miss anything. Several hours later, the brothers were still in the same positions. Aside from the heart rate, breathing, and occasional sleepy shift from Bella, the room had been completely still and silent. So when a golden aura surrounded their mate, even Arrow was surprised. Marcus heard the swift intake of air from Arrow and pushed his bond sight away. He was startled to find her glowing, just as she did to his gift. Keys's eyes had snapped open at the noise, wondering what had happened that he did not hear or feel. He beheld the golden nimbus with the same awe that was in his brother's expressions. He had only a moment to admire its beauty before vines grew around his mate from within her, reaching out to him and his brothers. He felt them grow around his arms and over his collarbone toward his unbeating heart. The vines also grew out from each brother to the other two, wrapping them all together. The web was unbreakable, yet fluid, allowing him to shift so that he had a better view of what was happening. When the vines stopped moving, golden lines sprung out from each of the three vampires, pushing through the vines that connected the kings to each other, and around the vines that tied them to Bella. The leaves were deep, glossy green, lined with shining gold. Suddenly, Bella stirred, and sat up, still on Keys. Her eyes were open, but the brown had been replaced entirely by green and gold. She spread her arms to the side, and spoke in a voice that did not quite sound like her own. "We are one, we are eternal, we are entwined." As she finished speaking, buds broke from the vines and blossomed fully. The entire thing glowed brilliantly, and then settled. Key's entire being was suffused with joy as, after 1500 years, he finally was able to see his mate bond with his own eyes. His mate was divine, naked, with a coronet of flowers and her limbs and torso adorned with garlands of rich green and gold. He would spend the rest of his existence worshipping this goddess. Before any of the three were able to breathe out their reverent thoughts, the bond began to melt away around the kings, becoming translucent before sinking into their skin. Where the bond touched, their vampire skin blazed with the unfamiliar and unwelcome sensation of great heat, before cooling once more. Before the vines around Bella disappeared completely, the skin beneath took on the appearance of the bark of an ancient oak. Where her mates still touched her, her human softness firmed, hardening until their gentle touches were obviously no longer needed. Marcus's eyes widened. In that moment, Taha Aki's instructions made sense and he knew what to look for when they began their quest for information. He could not take his eyes off his mate as the entire image sunk into her skin, leaving the same soft, creamy complexion as before. The only change was Bella's eyes. The starburst of brown had been replaced entirely by shades of green. And around her pupils and the outer edge of her irises shone rings of pure gold. The three brothers caught the beauty as her eyes fluttered shut and she slumped unconscious once more. As they lay her down, they noticed the green and gold design of vines, with a single white, 5-petaled flower decorating her left breast, where her heart still beat. And they finally noticed the colored markings on their own skin, a physical representation of their bond, winding up their arms and across their collarbones, ending over their hearts with the same design as their mates. Blank. The two powerful beings stood in a small clearing in the forest, looking down at the pair of blonde-haired vampires kneeling at their feet. "You have done well, young ones," the male declared. "She is with her mates now, and their purpose will endure. You kept her safe and influenced the decision that removed her from those who would mean her harm. You are released from your duty, with our gratitude. It is time to leave the Cullen Coven." Standing, Jasper sighed with relief. Even with Rosalie's gift misleading Edward's mind reading, the constant need to be on guard around the Cullens was tiresome. He remembered when he had been freed from Maria's clutches by Peter and Charlotte. They had taken him to a grove of trees, where he had first met the man currently standing before him. The same being who had unburdened Jasper's mind and taught him to feel beyond a person's surface emotions to the emotion of the soul itself. He could literally feel the good or evil intrinsic to that soul. And the magnitude of that good or evil. It made feeding on humans as easy for him as for any vampire. A truly evil soul was too tainted to feel the guilt, sadness, remorse, or even fear that a good soul would feel when chosen to become a vampire's meal. Jasper was able to focus down to that level and feel nothing but satisfaction in his feeds. He knew that he had just rid the world of one who deserved to die. It had not felt like an obligation when, 10 years later, he was asked to help another vampire watch the Cullen clan. He was sent to meet Alice in Philadelphia. knowing she would take him to Carlisle's so-called family. She never knew that he had been sent, nor did she know that Rosalie had been the vampire he was to join. His first look at Alice's sole emotion had revealed the evil within. The same held for Carlisle. Rosalie's benefactor had revealed herself the first time the blonde beauty was allowed to hunt alone. Also appearing to the vampire in the middle of a copse of trees. She had offered Rosalie help getting revenge on those who had defiled her. The mysterious lady had been incensed that Rosalie had been unwillingly stripped of her virginity. That it was done in such a brutal fashion increased her ire. When the last vile man had died, soiling himself in fear, both females had felt a righteous sense of satisfaction. It was then that the lady had asked Rosalie to watch the Cullens. There would come a time, she had told the young vampire, when Rosalie's presence would save the life of one who, even though she had not yet been born, had already created a safer, more peaceful world for vampires and humans alike. In the meantime, Rose was to watch the Cullens carefully. Carlisle, she was warned, was not as altruistic as he appeared. Watch, and when the time came, she would know who to protect. Rosalie had graciously accepted her task. Even if Carlisle insisted that he had saved her from death, she never quite felt that his motives were pure. There was a gleam in his eye that caused her great unease. She knew that Carlisle had turned her to be a companion to Edward, and she could not help the shudder of revulsion at that thought. She wondered what Carlisle would have done if Edward had indeed been interested in her as a bedmate. Thankfully, the teenaged vampire was a brooding sort, occupied more with the morose melodrama of eternal adolescence than with the company of a female. All the world was a stage to Edward, and he seemed determined to play the tragic figure on that stage. Rosalie had happily found her mate in Emmett shortly thereafter. While the large vampire could be highly insensitive, he was a cheerful sort, always up for a prank, a good game, or a playful fight. He balanced Rosalie's serious nature, and soothed the dark, hurt places within her. Rosalie had not known about her gift, until the lady revealed it to her. She could mislead the invasive powers of other vampires. She had been violated enough in life. The other female had told her. Her privacy would not be violated in undeath. Edwards heard only thoughts that she didn't feel needed to be kept private, and no one knew she had a gift unless she told them herself. When Jasper came to them with Alice, she was glad to know she had a powerful and trusted ally with her. While she trusted her mate with her heart and body, the task she had been given was too important for Emmett's casual nature and flippant attitude. Jasper, on the other hand, was anything but flippant. Sometimes too serious, he wasted no time in identifying Carlisle and Alice as the true dangers. Rosalie never realized until she told him about her gift that it had extended to protect his privacy the moment she knew he could be trusted with her mission. They had experimented with Edward to be certain, and it was obvious that he did not hear their true thoughts about his character. So the two waited and watched, enduring the discomfort of living with a coven they did not trust and, for Jasper, also enduring the constant hunger that came with animal blood. Rosalie still could not bring herself to feed from humans, and so had no idea what she was denying herself. Decades passed, but when Edward met Bella, they knew that she was the one they were supposed to protect. Rosalie had just one question for the female standing before them. "My lady, why couldn't we just have taken her to her mates and avoided everything that happened? Wouldn't it have been safer for her? Trust in the fates, daughter. Alliances have been formed that would not have been otherwise. Taking the girl would have made enemies out of those who should not be, and the path we still travel could have led into an abyss. We still have not been able to figure out who commands Carlisle and Alice, my lady." Jasper felt compelled to point out that he and Rosalie had never been able to follow the two schemers to their rendezvous over the years rankled his military pride. "We know who is behind the threat, child," the female gently reminded him. "We just do not know the form they have taken. Worry not, for the spirits have taken a warning to our chosen, and now that they are together they are stronger than ever. They will be ready when the time comes." "My lord, what of the others? Rosalie and Emmett and I will of course leave immediately, but what of Edward and Esme? He is a spoiled, misguided, arrogant child. But he is not evil. And poor Esme has never been treated kindly. Not in her human life, nor in this one. She lives each day terrified and feeling worthless. But I have never encountered a more gentle soul. She does not deserve to be left behind. Take them to the Quileute wolves, young one," the male instructed. "Although Yamos has tainted Alice's sight, it is always preferable when she does not see at all." For her own protection, he lifted his shroud on Bella for a brief time, but she is completely veiled once more. The wolves will keep anyone near them shrouded also. Edward and Esme will be safe there. Why did letting Alice see Bella protect her? Rosalie knew that she didn't always get answers to her questions, but she had never been rebuked for asking. Rosalie, the deep voice gently queried. Do you think that Carlisle would have waited to try to turn her if she had been immune to both Alice and Edward's gifts? He barely waited to begin with, and may not have at all. If Edward had not been so keen on keeping her human, and he so keen on maintaining his illusion of benevolence. Her shield is inherent to her, but we could make her visible to Alice until there was no longer a need. So Edward's spoiled, controlling, brooding selfishness actually managed to accomplish something good. That's got to be a first. There are faults in all creatures, Rose, the lady's tone was firm. Even among us. But good can come from even the most flawed. Remember that, and that Edward's soul was never influenced to evil, as Carlisle's was. The core of his being is pure, and the Quileute will help him find his strength of character. Jasper and Rosalie both bowed their heads in acknowledgement, and when they raised their eyes once more, the clearing was empty. The three kings hovered over their mate briefly, studying the newly formed design over her breast, and admiring their own adornment. Each was proud that their mate had found a way to mark them as her own. Keyes in particular felt overwhelmed. He had asked his brothers to describe their bond so many times, but the physical manifestation he had just witnessed was beyond what he had imagined. He now knew why Arrow insisted that it was impossible to reproduce. His joy at the moment was marred only by his concern for his still unconscious Bella. He cautiously rose from the bed, expecting a protest from the beauty on the bed. His worry increased when she did not react to his absence at all. Pacing, he glared at Arrow and Marcus. Why does she still sleep, brothers? We still do not know what is happening. I thought that she would awaken after that display. Does she change, after all? Peace, Keyes, soothed Marcus, rising from the bed and redressing himself. She has changed, beyond the wildest imaginings of us all. I do not know when she will return to us, but I do now know where to begin our search for information. Clothe yourselves, and cover Bella, brothers. Dimitri, he raised his voice just slightly, come to us, please. Blank, _, blank. Everything you can find on the subject, Dimitri. Every scrap, no matter how small, going back as far as we have. Use as many of the senior guard as you need. But you and Jane are the only two among the guard who ever learned the ancient languages, and she is not here. So it falls to you to scour the oldest texts. Bring it all to us. Yes, Master Marcus. Dimitri hesitated before continuing. It is Christmas Eve, masters. Will Felix still be able to leave gifts for the children this year? He was most excited about taking Leah with him. He believes it will help her to understand that we are more than blood-sucking monsters. He thinks she still doubts us. Arrow appeared at the door where Marcus stood instructing the tracker, smiling gleefully. Despite having the majority of his mind still focused on their treasure secure beneath the bedsheets. Of course, Felix may go. We wouldn't deprive the children of Volterra the wonder and magic of Christmas. He ignored a derisive snort from Keyes. And what a marvelous idea to take Leah with him. She needs more joy in her life, and this will touch the softness she tries so hard to mask. Dimitri inclined his head in gratitude. A wry grin on his face. His Leah did indeed try to mask her softness, and he knew she had succeeded back in La Push. But no matter how much she glared at the vampires here, every one of them was eager to know her. Even now, she was hiding in their chambers, pretending to need rest, just to get away from the delighted ladies of the coven. They did not need Arrow's gift to recognize a kind spirit, and were fascinated by both her nature, and the fact that she had two mates. Marcus dismissed the guard, and turned back to the bed, just as Bella groaned, inhaling deeply and rolling onto her back. She blinked her eyes open and sat up, moving faster and more gracefully than she had ever managed to do before. She gasped as her mind shed the last bits of sleep away. She remembered her mates, bites as her orgasm spiraled out of control, but everything afterwards was blank, until this moment when she awoke. Before she could panic, or even put a startled hand to her breast or neck to feel the bite marks. 3 strong male bodies encircled her on the bed. Amata, we are here. You are safe. Marcus smoothed his hand down her hair and smiled into her changed eyes. Quite safe. But I don't understand. Bella's eyes were as bewildered as her tone. You guys bit me. What happened? How long was I out? Why didn't I burn? She felt her heart start to race as her breathing picked up. I'm still human. Why am I still human? I'm supposed to change. I want to change. I want to be with you forever. I'm meant to be with you forever. Keys stilled her torrent of words with a soft kiss. It's okay, Bella. You have been unconscious for the better part of a day. You did change. And even though your heart still beats, we suspect you are every bit as immortal as we are. More perhaps. Dearest, Arrow wondered, do you remember nothing of what happened a short time ago? When Bella shook her head, he slipped off his shirt. Her eyes widened as she saw the colored pattern now decorating his skin. At the height of your change, our bond manifested through you, and marked us all. Even you. Look at your breast, precious one. Instead of looking at herself, Bella reached an unsteady hand out to touch the marks on Arrow's arms and chest. She skimmed her fingers along his arm, then paused, frowning, and laid her whole hand upon his chest. You are warm, she whispered, and soft. You were cool and hard before, even to me. But now you are warm and soft. She grabbed Arrow's hand, still not quite believing what her mind was telling her. She began to squeeze. Am I stronger, Arrow? If I had squeezed your hand yesterday, you would barely have felt anything. Do you feel me now? Arrow grimaced and extricated his hand from Bella's. You are quite strong, cara mia. Perhaps not as strong as a newly born vampire. But at least as strong as we are, I would think. And your skin has hardened, too. You may not see it, but it is there, just beneath the surface. Protecting you. The dark shadows beneath. Your eyes are gone and your figure is perfect. You will see for yourself soon. You are magnificent. But what does it all mean? Bella wondered, still rubbing her hand down Arrow's chest. She had so many questions milling about her brain, that she hardly noticed when Arrow began to purr, covering her hand, and stroking up her arm to push aside her hair. What am I, now, if I am not a vampire? Arrow ran his tongue over the mark his teeth had left on his mate, and smiled when she gave a shuddering gasp. He had not forgotten her assertion that she still wanted him and Marcus. We have set the guard to searching for answers, dearest. We have an idea, but need more information before we can be certain. In the meantime, my mate, I would like to indulge in the wonders of your body. As would I, Marcus's bee. Our chest pressed against her back as one hand reached around to play with a bare nipple. He buried his other hand in her hair, guiding her head up and back, so he could ravage her mouth with his. Moaning into his mouth, she arched her breasts against his hand, and was rewarded when Arrow claimed her other nipple with his teeth and tongue. And this time, Amata, Marcus broke the kiss to whisper hotly in her ear. We will be able to take you without fear of injury. This time, if you will place your trust in us, we will hold nothing back. Are you ready for us? Bella shivered in arousal at his words. She had thought about protesting the lovemaking until she knew what had happened, but her body ached for her mates. She would not be satisfied until she had felt each of them within her. I trust you, she said softly. I do not fear you. Or being with you. A groan made her look up to see Keys, nude once more. He was watching his brothers with Bella, one hand firmly around his erection. Lay back, my Bella. I have felt the delight of your body around me. Now I would like to taste its sweetness. Bella smiled wickedly. Perhaps, Keys, I would like you to lay back, so that I may taste your sweetness. She held out a hand and when he took it, she pulled him to her side. Arrow shifted, eyeing her with a delighted grin, while Marcus simply continued to tease and caress her nipples, and along her spine. She nuzzled her face against Keys's thigh, then pulled a little harder, until he sat on the bed next to her. A quick push had him laying back, happy to let her explore at her leisure. Bella turned around to Marcus, gripping both hands into his hair and pulling his mouth down to hers. When she pulled away for breath, she turned to Arrow, almost startled to find him so close. Giving him a breathless kiss. She looked him and Marcus in the eyes. I want you both, so much, she panted. But I also want to try this, she blushed, gesturing to Keys. Don't stop, though. I love your hands and mouths on me. I want to feel you making love to me. You will certainly feel our hands and mouths on you, Amata, Marcus declared with black eyes. It is our purpose to please you, and we will find our own pleasure in that. Do not be afraid to try anything, or ask for anything, or deny us anything. Although, Arrow grinned again, I have no doubts you will enjoy every touch we place upon you. Bella acknowledged the truth in that with a shy smile, and then turned back to look at Keys. Her white-haired mate was beautiful, as were Marcus and Keys. His body was lean, and smooth, all sculpted muscle and perfect vampire flesh. While she had always felt plain compared to vampires, Keys's eyes were devouring her body as though he had never before seen a female. She wondered if she'd ever grow accustomed to the we she saw in her mates, expressions every time they looked at her. Her eyes slid down to his erection, and she reached for it, touching and stroking much as she had done with Marcus earlier. Keys groaned, and put his hand over hers, showing her the pressure and speed that he himself preferred. When she began to follow his movements, he let go of her hand and reached for her breasts. Her nipples were deliciously responsive, and he rolled them between his fingers before releasing them. Bella shifted so that she was lying between his legs, then, in a rush of boldness, leaned down and licked his shaft from base to tip. Keys's head fell back with a surprised cry, and he bucked his hips up. Bella smiled, shyly pleased that she was able to make her mate react with such fervor. She repeated the action, this time swirling her tongue around the tip and closing her lips around it. Bella felt another set of cool hand run down her back, skimming the sides of her breasts before landing on her hips. Fingers kneaded deeply into the flesh there, raising her hips, so that she was on her knees, with her elbows on Keys's thighs, and her mouth around his turgid length. "So beautiful, my Bella," Marcus said, admiring the sight of her femininity from behind. He pressed his thumbs to the crease of her thighs, running them down through her moist slit, to circle her clit. Bella moaned as she took Keys further into her mouth. She used one hand to steady and stroke him as she swirled her tongue over him, licking and sucking. She remembered her experience with Marcus, and brought her other hand up to play with his testicles. Keys threaded his hands through her hair, and held her gently as she honed her newly found skills on his willing member. Bella began to whimper as she moved against Marcus's still questing fingers. He had slipped two inside her, moving them in and out gently as he watched her please his soul brother. As he observed her movements grow more frantic against him, he pulled his fingers from her body and thrust himself inside her in one smooth motion. His delectable mate was shunted forward, moaning with surprise and pleasure around Keys's erection. "My Bella," Keys called out, fisting her hair tightly. Bella tasted the sweetness of his seed as he filled her mouth, and swallowed quickly. Releasing him, she gave full voice to her excitement. "Fuck, Marcus." "Oh," her wails of pleasure became wordless as tension built within her. She could feel each slide of his body within hers, his hands where they gripped her hips with unheeded strength, and the slap of his sack against her clit with each forward motion. "Marcus," she cried once more, before her body shook with pleasure, clenching around him as he continued his pace in and out of her. With a final hard push, he pulsed inside her, painting her inner walls with his release. She screamed, and screamed again, grabbing at Keys's available hands, as if they were an anchor to keep her from flying away. Her head rested against Keys's pelvis as she tried to slow her breathing. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, fondling her breasts as he pulled her up flush against his chest. He still moved shallowly within her, as he ran his nose up the side of her neck and into her hair. "Look, Bella," he gently turned her head to the side. Arrow's dark gaze met hers, and she shuddered at the hunger she saw there. His hard cock was out and in his hand. "Look how he lusts for you. He has waited for you as long as we all have. Keys and I have consummated our union with you. It is Arrow's turn." That reminder was all Bella needed to launch herself at her third mate. "Arrow, I did not forget you. I promise I didn't. I just lost myself there for a few minutes. Why didn't you come to me?" Bella was frantic, thinking that Arrow would feel unwanted for any length of time. "Bella, dearest," he said, kissing her eyelids and her mouth, "I did not feel slighted. I know this is new for you, and pleasing three males is a daunting task. But it is our job to pleasure you. I did not come because watching my brothers immerse themselves in your body at the same time is one of the most arousing things I can imagine. I knew you would not forget me." He grinned. "I would not let you forget." Nor, apparently, would Marcus, although he should have suspected that his words would distress you. "You were right, Arrow. I am sorry, Amata. It was not my intention to worry you." Bella smiled, laying a hand on Marcus's cheek in an unspoken gesture of forgiveness. Then she faced Arrow once more, pushing him onto his back and laying down on top of him. "He was right, though," she stated, leaning down to nibble along his jaw. "It is your turn." Arrow pulled her mouth to his, kissing her deeply. He captured her searching tongue in his mouth, and sucked on it lightly. His hand stayed on the back of her neck, while the other snaked down to capture her backside, squeezing the generous muscles there. His hardness pressed to her center and he moved her hips so they slid against each other. Bella continued the motion, sliding back and forth, as she grabbed his hair with both hands and lost herself to his plundering tongue and lips. The next time she slid back, Arrow tilted her hips, raising her slightly, and plunged his length into her depths. He had a lot more girth than either Marcus or Keys, and Bella stilled for a moment to adjust to the new size and position. Then, pulling up to sit on him, she began the rhythmic sliding motion once more. Her breast swung and bounced with the movement of her body, and Arrow lifted a hand from her hip to trap a nipple between his fingers. Pinching lightly, he stopped the sway of her breast, and allowed the to and fro action to provide its own pull on the captive bud. Bella shivered, closing her eyes to absorb the sensation, and her tempo faltered. Arrow used his other hand to guide her back to her erotic cadence, lifting his hips to match her beat. Faster they went, until Bella could feel the heat surging within her once more. When her body began to shudder, Arrow released her nipple, and swiftly moved his hand down to pinch her clit. Bella flew apart, loudly keening through her orgasm. She felt Keys and Marcus' sucking the marks on either side of her neck, as Arrow rose up and ran his tongue over the mark on her breast. Before she could come down from the heights, Arrow grunted, spilling inside her, and the three of them sank their teeth into her marks again. Bella screamed out in pleasure, and the kings felt the designs over their hearts flare up with heat once more. The kings removed their teeth from Bella's skin, and she fell against Arrow. This time, however, she did not fall unconscious. She turned her head up to meet his eyes. "I love you," she murmured softly. "I love all of you. And we love you, Bellisma." Marcus answered from next to her ear, petting her hair. I love it when you pet me." She rolled off of Arrow and stretched before sitting up. "I expected to be sore, but I'm not." She ran her fingers over the marks on her neck, and then traced the one over her breast. She studied the design there, noting how the crescent-shaped impression worked well into the pattern. Smooth skin on her arm caught her attention and she gasped. "What is it, Bella?" Keys frowned as his mate began to search her body, making small disbelieving noises. "My scars, they are gone. Every mark from every scrape and cut I ever had is gone." She looked at her wrist hopefully, then grimaced. "Except, of course, the one I'd really like to see disappear." Keys took her hand in his, turning her wrist upward and kissing the mark there. "We all felt your pain that day, my darling. This unwanted reminder may not leave your skin, but we can replace it with our own teeth, if you choose." "Yes, it is permanent, Amata." Marcus shook his head sadly. "The scar even manifested on the bond. See," he pointed to a spot on Keys's mural, "that silvery line appeared along with the pain that day, and we were frantic with worry. But the rest of your scars are not supernatural. After the bond manifested, your body completed the change on the outside." Marcus stood, unashamedly naked, and held out a hand to her. "Come with me." Bella took Marcus's hand and allowed him to pull her to her feet. With Keys and Arrow following, he escorted her through a door she had barely noticed before, and into a dressing room. "Wow," she breathed, looking at the generous space. "I think this is Alice's wet dream. This is your closet, and yours, dearest." Arrow smiled indulgently. "Although I would not call it a closet. Several of the chests of drawers are for you. And the dressing table is yours as well." He indicated a wall of empty hanging racks and shelves. "And, of course, that is yours also. We will need to purchase you a wardrobe soon. If you do, and think that you have enough room here, or desire a dressing room of your own, we will arrange that." Bella choked, wide-eyed. I think this is plenty of room, thanks. And I don't need my own. But, you guys don't each have your own space." "We do, my darling. Over time we will each show you the places we consider individual to us. But in this we are as one. When you were born we started to prepare this suite of rooms for the eventuality of the four of us. There is no need for us to have our own chambers. Now, I believe Marcus brought you in here to show you yourself. Look." He turned her to Saint, and in front of an ornately framed full-length mirror. Bella gaped as she regarded her reflection in the silvered glass. She was still herself, but everything had been enhanced. Her normally pale complexion was like porcelain. Gone was the evidence of sleepless nights and weeks of poor diet. Her skin was flawless and appeared slightly luminescent. Her ribs no longer poked out, and her hips and breasts were full and inviting. She cupped her breasts, just as she had in the bathroom not too long ago, and realized they were slightly larger. "My boobs got bigger?" she asked, mostly talking to herself. "How cliché." Arrow laughed. "Simply a side effect of gaining back whatever weight you lost, dearest. You are not a chainmail-clad superheroine who fights to keep her bounty in a skimpy top with as much effort as she battles evil. Your proportions remain perfection itself." Bemused, Bella gave Arrow a "what the fuck" look before resuming her inventory of her body's changes. Her muscle tone had improved, giving her arms, legs, butt and abs definition in a purely feminine way. Her hair had thickened a bit, and bounced in loose curls down her mid-back. Its color was rich and vibrant, shining the W.I. she'd only seen hair do in shampoo commercials. She was, even by her own self-deprecating standards, very sexy. Very beautiful. My eyes, she whispered in awe, drawing closer to the mirror. They changed color. As our bond manifested, we watched them change. It was a breathtaking sight. Keys's face showed his lingering rapture at witnessing his mate bond. Bella studied her image a little longer, then turned around to look at her mates. So, what happened, do you think? I'm obviously not a vampire, but I'm not human anymore, either. You said you had an idea. Arrow and Keys looked to Marcus to explain. He was, after all, the one who had suggested what she was. It was an extraordinary idea, but Marcus insisted he was right. According to the guiding spirits of the Quileute wolves, Marcus began. Our bond was foretold in ancient Greece. We were instructed to seek information from the teachings of our human time, and to look to you in the bond for clues. I had thought it before we heard the words of the spirits, but simply as a passing admiration of the bond. It wasn't until your skin hardened and took on the appearance of an oak. He paused as Bella interrupted. Wait, what? I turned into a tree. How is that helpful? No, dearest, you did not turn into a tree, Arrow attempted to clarify. The hardening of your skin took on the appearance of the bark of an oak, before sinking into lay beneath the surface. By the look in Bella's face, Arrow's helpful explanation did nothing to ease her confusion. He sighed, I suspect your skin is nearly as impenetrable as ours, even if it still looks soft. We will try to ascertain your strength soon. Okay, Bella shook her head and turned back to Marcus, so what am I, if I'm not a tree? As I was saying, Marcus smiled gently, I had thought it in passing before. But that final detail did not emerge until your change. You are beautiful all the time, but you could rival the goddesses when the bond manifests around you. I believe, Amata, that you are, at least partly, a nymph. I also believe you are partly a vampire. A nymph, echoed Bella. You mean like a tree spirit? There are many different kinds of nymphs, Marcus explained. They are all female, and all nature spirits. Tree spirits are one type, although even among the dryads there are many different varieties. Nymphs are also companions of the gods, or at least they were in ancient Greece. Okay, so you think I'm, what? An oak nymph or something? Bella shook her head doubtfully. Vampires and shifters were one thing, but ancient gods. She couldn't quite bring herself to believe that. Actually, dearest, Arrow began. We are not sure. That's why we have set the guard to search the library here. The entire bond has many components, my darling. Keys came to stand behind her and pressed himself close. He ran his hands up her arms, before pushing her hair to one side and pressing a kiss to the mark there. You smell like wild violets and frankincense, your skin appears oak-like, the vines are ivy, and the flowers are plumeria. You are a veritable bouquet, Arrow grinned. Bella snickered. Arrow, she was learning, was an intriguing adaptation of old-fashioned courtliness and modern-day life. His interest in technology and popular culture seemed incongruent in a creature who lived in an ancient castle and was even more ancient himself. And yet, the blend was utterly charming to her. She raced the flower on her skin as she met Keys's eyes in the mirror. I've never heard of plumeria. It's pretty. Does it have a meaning? It is a tree flower, also known as frangipani. Many human cultures attach great symbolism to it. Primarily, it is associated with creation, recreation, new beginnings, new life and love. However, it is also a symbol of immortality, dedication and devotion. Their old not be another flower that so accurately portrays our bond. Keys turned Bella to him, cupping her face in his hands and running his thumbs along her cheekbones. He lowered his mouth to hers and laid a reverent kiss upon her lips. Her eyes drifted shut and he kissed her eyelids before hugging her tightly. He inhaled deeply and then pulled back to look into her eyes. Do you feel thirst, my darling? A burn in your throat that will not subside? Bella thought about it, then shook her head. It doesn't burn, or hurt at all, but there is a sort of dryness. Like I don't have enough saliva to swallow. I could just need a drink of water. I could go for something to eat, too. Marcus gave her an appraising look. Let us dress, and see what the kitchens have to offer. Then, if you will allow us, we will take you to meet the rest of the coven. Blank. Rosalie drove through the streets of Forks, with Jasper beside her. He looked more weary than she had ever seen him before. In the second row of the dark SUV, Esme and Edward sat quietly. Emmett was at the very back, sullen and confused. He would always follow wherever his Rose went, but he was upset that she and Jasper seemed to be conspiring together. He had always thought that she told him everything, and now he saw that there was something important that he had been left out of. It hurt, and he wasn't sure how to deal with it. It had been both a simple and difficult matter to leave the Cullen coven. Alice had been terse lately, muttering and rubbing her forehead, a displeased and confused frown on her face. More and more often she left the house by herself, telling everyone she needed to hunt. Edward saw she was feeling badly about Bella, although he looked pained when he said it. Rosalie figured that those thoughts were Alice's way of keeping Edward from knowing her true thoughts. She knew that Alice's visions were faulty now, and that was the real reason for her behavior. It had taken less than a day before Carlisle and Alice were both away from the house at the same time. He would not be finished his shift at the hospital for several hours, but how long Alice would be gone, and whether or not she would see their decision was uncertain. They had to leave while they had the chance, and they had to do it fast. That was the simple part. The real difficulty lay in convincing Edward and Esme to come with them. There was no time for explanations, and no time to convince them of Carlisle's and Alice's true natures. As soon as the last echo of Alice's footsteps had faded, and Jasper's gift had confirmed her distance, he had turned that gift on the two other vampires, overwhelming them with complacency and cooperation. Rose had gone with Emmett, chivying her mate to help her pack a small set of clothes for each of them. And whatever personal keepsakes they had. Jasper's influence had to be maintained throughout the flight to Port Angeles and the drive to Forks. He had never used his gift continuously for so long, and he was as fatigued as a vampire could get. He needed to feed, and soon, he was looking forward to openly enjoying his first real meal in years, but he had to get Edward and Esme to the wolves first. Considering what he'd heard from Rosalie, the protectors of La Push would not welcome him with red eyes, no matter who he claimed had sent them. In fact, he was not sure about their reception at all. He was certain that the Quileute did not know that they were about to be asked to protect the very vampire who treated Bella so poorly. He also knew the terms of the treaty Carlisle had with the tribe. And he expected to be attacked the second they entered La Push's boundaries. However, his master's orders were quite clear. The Quileute, whether they knew it or not, were now assuming guardianship for Edward and Esme. Jasper hoped they were up to the task. He sighed deeply and closed his eyes. He wished there was a way to contact the pack, but Carlisle had not shared that information. Not even through his thoughts. The only thing we can do is roll down the windows and drive until they smell us and come running, Rosalie pursed her lips. Her thoughts had been running along the same lines as Jasper's. She remembered the last pack. There were only 3 then, but she had a feeling there were more now. She wished they had been given more information, but there was no point bemoaning the lack at this stage. From the back, Emmett scowled. I don't understand any of this, Rose. Why did we leave Carlisle and Alice like that? Why are we dragging Edward and Esme with us? Without giving them a choice. Why are we running to La Push? You know the wolves will attack us when they catch us on their land. Are you and Jasper trying to get us all killed? Meaden. Emmett's angry eyes in the rear-view mirror. Rosalie shook her head. Emmett, I know you don't understand. There is so much I haven't told you, that I haven't been able to tell you, and I'm sorry. We're trying to save you. Not get you killed. The wolves will help, if they give us a chance to explain. And once these two, she jerked her head toward the passive vampires behind her, are settled, I promise I will tell you everything. Please just trust me, Em. You might not think I deserve it at the moment, but I hope you'll change your mind when you know everything. Emmett held her eyes for a long moment, before looking away. Huffing and crossing his arms over his chest. Fine, Rose, I'll keep quiet, I'll even lay down and present my neck for those dogs to chew on, if this is that important. But I expect a really good explanation after, and I want you to tell me why Jasper knows everything you've been keeping hidden from your own mate. Regret colored Rosalie's eyes, and she nodded. I promise, Emmett, she whispered. Blank. Jake phased in response to the urgent howl. It was mid-afternoon on Christmas Eve, and Embry and Paul were patrolling together. Embry had turned out to be an excellent beta, and his even temper and steady nature worked well with Paul's more volatile personality. Paul, Embry, what is it? Jake thought, seeking their eyes through his mind. He saw Paul growling at a black SUV. The windows were rolled down, and the smell of vampires hung in the air. The Cullens are back, spat Paul. And they've broken the treaty. They passed the boundary about 5 minutes ago. The rest of the pack shifted in as Paul was finishing his explanation. Before Jake could order the pack to join Paul, Embry spoke up. I think they came looking for us, specifically. They have the windows rolled down and we're only driving about 5 miles an hour. And they stopped and shut off the vehicle as soon as Paul showed up. I'm nearly there. Okay, Sam and Jared, stay here, Jake ordered. You probably want to be closer to your imprints if anything happens. Seth, can you ask Jane to join us? It might be good to show them that we have powerful allies among their kind. Quill and I will meet you both there. Minutes later, the occupants of the SUV watched with wide eyes as 4 giant wolves surrounded the vehicle. Rosalie barely dared move as the largest of the wolves pushed his snout close to the window, looking at the vampires inside. His eyes darted to Edward and he let out a deep growl, baring his teeth with his hackles rising. He backed away slowly, before turning to dart into the woods. Jake heard Seth and Jane approaching as he phased to human and pulled on his shorts. They arrived next to him, Jane riding on Seth's massive back. Her ants of his greater speed had been grudging the first time she witnessed it. Seth had managed to persuade her to let him take her for a ride, and by the end her usually stern face had been transformed by a wide, delighted smile. Now, she rode on Seth often, and the young man could barely contain his joy. Seth, shift back, please. I'd like both of you to come with me. Let's see what these vamps want. He smiled slightly as Jane turned her back swiftly, allowing Seth privacy to phase and dress. Jane shook her cloak out, and pulled up the hood. She really had no need of it, but it was a long-standing habit to wear it when dealing with other vampires. Nearly everyone in their world knew who the black-cloaked figures represented. When the 3 were ready, they strode out of the trees, one tiny figure flanked by 2 imposing males. Exuding confidence, Jake walked steadily up to the SUV with his companions. He stopped in front of the vehicle, as Seth went around to the driver's side, and Jane stood near the passenger door. Cullens, Jake began, you are trespassing on our lands. I am Jacob Black, alpha of this pack. Come out of the vehicle and explain what you are doing here. Where is Carlisle Cullen? He has always been the leader of your coven. Rosalie and Jasper exited the SUV slowly, keeping their hands in full view and their movements deliberate. We are not here to harm you or your people, Alpha, Jasper stated. Exhaustion evident in his voice. I am Jasper, and this is Rosalie. We were sent to you, to ask for your aid. We can explain everything, but the story is too long to tell in the middle of the street. We did not know what to expect when we arrived, but we certainly didn't think we'd find one of our kind here with you. Especially one of the red-eyed Volturi. You know about Bella, then. Is she still here, or has she returned to Italy with her mates? Jake's head jerked with surprise at the question. How do you know so much, Cullen? He asked with great suspicion. Did you conspire among your coven to keep them from her? If you came to try to stop her from leaving, then you are too late. She is in Italy, and happy for it. As for Jane here, that is none of your concern. We will escort you to the council hall, where you will explain your presence to my satisfaction. But first, Jake, Jane interrupted, this one must feed. He is not safe to be around humans right now. His eyes are black and bruised. Jasper has been keeping Edward and Esme calm for several hours. Since we left upstate New York. He is an empath, Rosalie explained, and can manipulate emotional states as well. We needed to get away from Carlisle and Alice, and did not have time to argue or explain. He cannot release his gift until they are well guarded. Emmett, she waved a hand to the back of the vehicle, is my mate. And will not harm anyone. You are too young to be using your gift for so long. Jane exclaimed, addressing Jasper. Especially with your deplorable diet. You will relinquish your charges to the wolves, Jasper Cullen. And follow me. We will get you a proper meal tonight. I'll call Charlie and see if he wouldn't mind donating some blood, Jake said. He's at my house right now anyway with the elders and Sue. If it's okay with him, she can collect it for you. It'll save time. Rosalie and Jasper gasped in shock, but Jane just nodded and handed Jake her phone. Bella's father was remarkably open-minded. Much like his daughter, he had already been talking about donating when he reached Volterra. He hadn't yet decided if he wanted to become a vampire. Wait, Rosalie waited until Jake finished his call before speaking. You actually are okay with us drinking human blood? How can that be? The treaty we signed with your ancestors was very clear about what would happen if we ever fed from a human. After you give us your story, we will give you ours. Jane, would you mind running ahead and picking up the blood? Sue, Harry, and Lucas are going to donate, too. Will that be enough to tide him over for a bit? I don't want him in the village until we're sure he is in control. I will be fine, Alpha, Jasper grumbled, irritated at being spoken about as though he were too weak to make his own decisions. Please thank them for me, he told Jane. I can hold my gift until you return. You will release them immediately. You need the break. Even vampires tire, and those of us with such powerful gifts fade more quickly. The pack is more than capable of guarding 2 vampires. Jake, we have time to get to La Push. It will take Sue a little while to gather the blood, but it is best if we can have it while it is still warm. Before it clots, we can wait with Jasper in the woods near your house. Until he feeds, he is too weary to use his gift to overcome us. Jake inclined his head in agreement. He was willing to trust Jane on this, since no one else had the necessary knowledge and experience for this situation. Okay then, you and I can cram in with the vamps, and everyone else will follow the vehicle. Make sure no one makes a run for it. He turned to look at Rosalie. Is that all right? Fine, Rose said curtly, climbing back into the driver's seat. She didn't like the way they had talked over Jasper, either. Let's just get this show on the road. You are not the only people I need to explain things to tonight. Jasper had pumped as much calmness as he could into Edward and Esme before releasing his gift. Esme had been very quiet since being escorted away from their New York residence. Jasper felt her hope and fear mingling together, the hope building the farther away from Carlisle they got. It was mostly Edward he was concerned about. The mind reader had become more and more confused as they traveled together. Although he remained passive under Jasper's influence, he kept asking questions. And couldn't understand why he wasn't getting any answers from Jasper's mind, or Rosalie's. It was interesting to note that his confusion had only increased after the wolves came. Jasper wondered if curiosity would be enough to keep Edward here, or if he would try to flee back to his sire at the first opportunity. The younger vampire had almost an unhealthy view of Carlisle. He regarded him as nearly perfect, and strove to please him. It took all of Jasper's effort to stay upright when his knees buckled, as the strain of actively using his gift for so long caught up with him. He got back into the passenger's seat, and leaned his head back, closing his eyes. He was desperate to feed, but too enervated to hunt. The thought of human blood being so willingly provided for him caused venom to pool in his mouth. He saw the young-looking vampire enter the SUV with a sharp look at him. Will you be able to control yourself when you feed, or will I have to watch you as one would a rabid dog, Cullen? Rosalie bristled at her sharp tone. There is no need to talk to him like that. You have no idea what we've been through. She started the vehicle and headed toward La Push. Jasper hushed Rosalie with a lethargic wave of his hand. It's okay, Rose. It's a fair question, even if impolitely delivered. You are Jane Volturi? He asked the female. At her nod, he continued, I will be able to control myself. This is not my first experience with extreme starvation, although this is the first time it is a self-inflicted condition. And please, my name is Whitlock, not Cullen. I have been Hale in the past, but never a Cullen. Jane noted the steely resolve in his voice, and smiled slightly. Very well, Jasper Whitlock. But I will nevertheless be watching you closely. Make no mistake, if you lose control and I have to stop you, you will not find the experience pleasant. Take a right here, and drive along the beach road. Jake broke into the tense silence that followed Jane's statement. It will take us around La Push, instead of through it, and it should be pretty deserted. Our house is at the end. The pack will keep to the woods, but it looks like you did an okay job knocking these 2 out. Edward almost looked stoned. He had his arm around Esme, her head buried in his shoulder, and her hair hiding her from view. Blank. Jasper felt more energized than he had in years. As hungry as he'd been. There was no blending of color in his eyes. Instead, they were vividly red for the first time since he met Alice. He knew he would have to feed again sometime during the week. But for now he was content. As soon as Jane had confirmed that he was no longer a danger to humans, Jake had sent Quill and Jared out to patrol, and led the pack and the vampires to the council hall, where the Quileute elders waited with Sue and Charlie. The chairs inside had been arranged in a circle, and the vampire guests were invited to seat themselves. The effects of Jasper's gift were wearing off of Edward and Esme. The Cullen matriarch had finally looked up when she exited the vehicle. She glanced quickly around, blanching at the sight of the giant half-naked shifters. He stiffened when she felt an arm around her, but quickly relaxed when she realized Emmett had tucked her into his side. Since the moment she had been changed, Esme had never taken any time away from Carlisle. During her newborn year, he had been kind and understanding, helping her to abstain from human blood and adjust to her new circumstances. Additionally, he privately showed her how to keep her surface thoughts constantly light and inconsequential. He claimed that he was teaching her so that Edward would not have to be constantly bombarded by their stresses and worries. Also, he added, as he trailed light kisses down her naked back, he didn't want Edward to see what they did in the privacy of their own chamber. She had a loving husband, at last, and a foster son on whom she doted, and who relished the maternal affection. Everything was perfect, Esme thought, until the first time she slipped after her newborn year. In front of Edward, Carlyle had expressed regret and concern for his wife's state of mind. And then offered to take her hunting to regain her amber eye color. It was then she learned what kind of monster had sired her. Carlyle had not listened to her remorse, had not cared that she was just 15 months old, and had come across a bleeding man. He had been unmerciful in his punishment that day. She screamed as he bit into her flesh, over and over again, making sure that they were in spots that would never be seen. He had beaten her until her skin cracked and the venom in her body flowed freely from his teeth. Then he had brought her an animal and sat next to her while she drank. I have an image to uphold, Esme Cullen, and you will not tarnish it. This is what will happen whenever you decide to taste human blood. It is not hard to abstain, if you put your mind to it. This lifestyle allows us to blend into the human world, where we can search out talent, like Edward's. I am looking to expand this family, and when the time is right, we will be heading to Washington. There is an alliance there I seek, but we dare not appear to be anything less than completely humane. Ruin that, Esme, and you will not like the consequences. Did I ever mention EPT several samples of the Spanish flu that killed Edward? It would be a shame to see that pandemic loose in the world again. Imagine, 100 million people dead, because you could not control yourself. With that he smiled, held out a hand to help her up, and started a leisurely run back toward the house. He stopped once more, just out of Edward's range, and bent close to her ear. One more thing. My dear, if your darling Edward should ever, and I do mean ever, hear of today's events, or any similar future encounters, in your mind, I will make you watch as I destroy him slowly. Then I will make today's punishment seem like lovemaking. Oddly, Carlyle had not been as angry as she feared when, 5 years later, Edward left to go feed in their natural prey. The worst beating she had been given had actually been on the day he called, sounding completely broken, asking for forgiveness, wanting to come home. Throughout the years she had been meticulous in maintaining the illusion of a loving and well-loved mate. The scars on her body were carefully hidden beneath the modest clothing that Carlyle favored, and she had perfected her calm and graciously hospitable facade. She had been terrified that Jasper would learn the truth when he and Alice joined the family, but he had never asked her about what she was sure he had felt on occasion. She did not know why, but she was glad he did not. Even if he was an experienced soldier and could help her escape, she could not take the chance that Carlyle would make good on those threats uttered that horrible day. That fear nearly overwhelmed her when Jasper and Rosalie came for her early this morning. As the miles passed she became more hopeful that everything would be okay, but she would not feel safe until the monster she had married was a pile of ash. Only decades of practice kept Edward from hearing her worst imaginings. Instead, she chose to take comfort in the arms of her cherished foster son, and the artificial peace that Jasper pressed upon them. She had felt the contact of a small, cold body in the vehicle as they made their way into the reservation, but did not want to raise her head to meet the Volturi female. Doing so would mean also having to meet the owner of the deep, menacing voice that so easily commanded everyone around him. The feelings of calm that Jasper had inundated them with dissipated almost completely during the time he fed. When it was time to leave the vehicle, Esme was once again trembling. She raised her head slightly to look around, and took a hasty step backward as she saw half a dozen large, russet-skinned men. Barely dressed, she could not bring herself to lift her eyes further, fearful of what she would see in their eyes. Carlyle had coveted his treaty with the Quileute more than anything she had known. But he had also warned her repeatedly just how dangerous they were to vampires. Emmett's protection was very welcome in that moment, and Esme settled herself securely against him. As they sat together, she noticed the elders in her periphery, but still did not look up. Jasper sat next to her, pushing a small amount of love and comfort at her. He pulled Edward down with him, ignoring the scowl Carlyle's oldest companion sent his way. Edward was looking around the room, a disgruntled frown prominent on his face and his hands gripping his wild hair. Before everyone had finished sitting, his patience had ended. And he sprang back up, heedless of the growls around him. He heard Esme whimper and burrow further into Emmett's side. "Why can't I get any answers from your minds?" he exclaimed. "You should all be thinking about this meeting, and what you know of Bella, not your laundry or your job, or your latest sexual conquest." He glared at Paul with that statement. Old Coo. Il shook his head at the bronze-haired vampire. "We have been warned of your gift, Edward Cullen, and know how to guard our thoughts. You will have to learn patience, and respect for the privacy of others. You, who have walked this world longer than most in this room, have not grown beyond the foolishness of youth. We do not know why you are here, either. Sit down, and we may all find our answers together." Edward glared at the elder, and then threw himself into his chair like a petulant child. Jasper rolled his eyes at the display, and gestured for Rosalie to begin. Seating herself next to Emmett with a stately grace, Rosalie looked around the room. "What do you know about vampires?" she asked. "Specifically, do any of you," she looked to Jane, "know how vampires began?" "I do not know, nor, to my knowledge, do the masters." Jane replied. "We do know that Stefan and Vladimir, the Romanians, are older than the masters by several centuries. I also know that Marcus does not know who his sire is, although he did sire Arrow and Keys. All we knew of vampires before this was from our legends," Billy put in, "and we've just learned how very little that was. We know you need blood to survive, have exceptional speed and strength, have nearly impenetrable skin that reflects the sunshine, and some of you have additional gifts. But we know nothing of your origins. Have any of you heard of Empuse and Lamii?" Rosalie watched as everyone around the circle shook their heads. Edward was still huffing and muttering to himself, although she knew he had studied Greek mythology as a way to pass the nights. Jane, though, looked thoughtful. "You are talking about the female underworld spirits from ancient Greek mythology. It is said they feasted on the blood of young men. I believe they were in the service of Hecate, who was a goddess and companion of Persephone, goddess of the underworld. Yes, there are two, well maybe three, types of vampires, but only one roams this mortal plane. Usually, the Empo, Usae and Lamii were the two types of original vampires, although the Lamii were also succubi. While their true forms were hideous, half demon and half human, they could resemble beautiful women when they wanted to, and often lured young men to them. Of course, the men never survived the encounters." She grimaced at growls from the wolves. "We are talking about thousands of years in the past. Would you wait while I call Italy?" Jane plucked her cell phone from her cloak pocket. "I believe that this is something the masters should know, and I do think they would prefer to have the information sooner rather than later." Rosalie nodded, and waited while the small vampire placed the call. "Merry Christmas, Jane," came Arrow's voice over the phone. "I trust you are enjoying your time with young Seth." "Merry Christmas, Master Arrow." Jane smiled softly, "But it is still Christmas Eve here. It is very early there. I hope I did not wake Bella. I know you will not be far from her." "We are awake, Jane. Bella has been changed, although she is no ordinary newborn, no ordinary vampire. It is amazing, Jane. He cut off his keys interrupted dryly. "While I agree that our maid is amazing, and I am quite certain that the pack and her father will want to hear everything, perhaps you should ask Jane why she called us Arrow. I know she was given instructions to enjoy this time with Seth and his family and not to call unless it was an emergency. Christmas does not constitute an emergency, no matter how excited you get about it." Arrow quickly agreed, and Jane filled him in on what had been happening in La Push. To say he was surprised that 5 of the Cullens had arrived unannounced was an understatement. He spluttered and blustered, and promised all sorts of dire retributions upon their heads. Finally, Marcus had to wrest the phone away, while Bella ran her hands down his arms and placed her head against his shoulder. With Arrow sufficiently distracted, Marcus asked Jane to continue. "Rosalie Cullen," she began. "McCarty," Rose interrupted curtly. Emmett smiled and placed his hand over hers. Jane narrowed her eyes. "Rosalie McCarty, then, seems somewhat better informed on vampire origins than any other vampire alive, Master Marcus." She was about to explain what she knows about our beginnings, and how they came to seek haven in La Push. Jane proceeded to repeat verbatim what Rose had said about the original vampire spirits. Marcus hummed in agreement. "Due to the nature of Bella's change, I set Dimitri the task of searching the most ancient texts last night, before she awoke. We have already determined that what most today consider mythology is, in fact, as much a part of this world as we are. We will listen to what Rosalie has to say." We were just heading down to the kitchens to see what would tempt our Bella. It seems she hungers for human food, still. Wait a moment while we call for sustenance instead. I will put you on speakerphone, if you will do the same. Jane set her phone nearer to the elders, where they would be less likely to miss any comments from Italy. Okay, masters, we are ready when you are. It was Arrow who spoke this time, in a tone of voice that underscored his dislike of the vampires he was addressing. You may proceed, Rosalie McCarty, from where you left off. I am most anxious to hear if anything you say can excuse the way you treated our mate. In their chamber in Italy. Bella chided Arrow with a softly placed hand on his shoulder and a whispered, "Be nice," in his ear. He pulled her into his lap and glowered at the phone. Rose did a swift mental count to 10. She hoped that by the time this phone call was over, everyone would understand just how much she and Jasper had helped Bella. She didn't need accolades, but she was sick of being treated like dirt. Taking a deep breath, and throwing a quick glance of thanks to Jasper for his small hit of patience, she continued her story. In the time of the Greek gods, unusual pregnancies were not uncommon. Athena, for example, was born fully grown from the cracked skull of Zeus, after he swallowed her mother while she was still pregnant. So there came a time when one of these spirits, called Mormo, found herself expecting. The child within grew quickly, with as much of a thirst for blood as the spirit herself. After a very short while, the child ripped itself from its mother's womb, and crawled from the underworld, falling upon a village of farmers with a savage bloodthirst. This child did not drain every villager, and the few that remained burned as though they had been dipped into the volcanic forge of the god Hephaestus. Zeus saw the demon child and destroyed it, but he allowed the changed creatures to remain. When the gods quit this mortal plane, or dimension we could call it, the created vampires stayed. The Egyptian coven leader is the last of those original creations. That's very interesting, but what does it have to do with us or Bella? Jacob was at once fascinated and confused. What does it have to do with you? And why you're here? Is this Egyptian the ancient evil we've been told to prepare for? I don't know, Rosalie stated simply. We think the Empuse and Lamii have been set loose on this world once more. But we have not been told why. Jasper and I have spent the last several decades watching the Cullens, to try to determine what form these spirits have taken. There are several possibilities, but no proof. We have also been waiting for Bella, so that we could protect her from Carlisle and Alice. What do you mean, protect her? Edward sneered, before anyone else could ask. Carlisle and Alice never did a thing to hurt Bella. They loved her, cared for her, and treated her like family. You and Jasper are the ones who made her feel unwelcomed. You and Alice are the ones who controlled my every move. Came clear female notes from the telephone. Bella's voice did not have the crystal cadence of a vampire, but she had gained an aspect to her tone that brought to mind a walk through the forest, or feeling the spray of the ocean beating upon the rocks, or laying in a meadow on a cool spring day. Edward flinched when he heard her, remembering their time together with both longing and dislike. He had not been lying when he had told her she was a distraction, but he recalled vividly the decadent call of her blood. He had loved the idea of being with his singer, more than the actual experience. He had also basked in the praise Carlisle heaped upon him for his restraint. You and Alice are the ones who brought me into the family, and then abandoned me without a second thought. Bella went on. You were my first love and Alice my sister. Rosalie and Jasper never made promises they did not keep. Jasper told me once that I was worth it, but he was never clear what it was. If they say they were protecting me, then I will believe them and listen to the rest of their story. They, at least, have never lied to me. Never made me feel like they loved me as a sister, mother, or father. And then left without a word. Listen to what a person says, for once, Edward. Not all answers are in someone's thoughts. You should know that. I have learned your gift is limited in its scope. Silence descended after Bella's reprimand. Emmett and Esme swallowed their hurt and their guilt, promising themselves that they would beg her forgiveness at a more appropriate time. Edward sat back in his chair, crossing his arms and pouting once more. You are worth so much more than what I sacrificed, Bella. Jasper's voice was tight, as his own emotion threatened to overwhelm him. Even before you were born, I was pledged to safeguard your life. Meeting you served to solidify my resolve. Now that you have been safely united with your mates, I only hope that you will allow me to continue to watch over you. Aren't you the one who let her get away in Phoenix, where she got bitten by that nomad? Jake asked. And also the one who tried to eat her on her 18th birthday. How can you say you were saving her life? Phoenix. Yes, well, Alice had sent me to check out of the hotel room when James called Bella. She was watching James so closely that she should have seen his decision to call, and the events that followed. Bella escaped from me, true, but that's because she was familiar with the airport, and went where I could not follow. Once she made the decision to use the ladies' room as an exit. Alice should have seen that, but she did not alert me, or hurry to catch Bella. In fact, I called her and started tracking Bella when I became concerned. I do believe that Alice had seen the outcome of that day. And her intent was to have Bella change or die. When we got to the studio, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction from her, and also from Carlisle. James was the most immediate threat that day. But he was not the worst one. I did the only thing I could do. I sent Edward intense feelings of self-loathing, desperation, and love, then bolstered what little honest feelings Carlisle has for him. It was enough to have Carlisle agree to Edward's pleading that they try to save her in her human form. Then I absorbed every scrap of bloodlust from Edward that I could safely handle. It was close, so very, very close. If Edward had not stopped drinking, if he had hesitated a fraction of a second longer, I would have torn everyone apart and taken Bella to safety myself. You lie. Edward jumped to his feet once more. Charlie rolled his eyes at the histrionics. Carlisle saved Bella that day. He was the one who encouraged me to suck out the venom. He stopped her bleeding, and kept her alive until we got to the hospital. You did the only thing you've ever been good at, he sneered. I'm sure you reveled in the violence as you tore James apart. With the last word barely past his lips, he fell to the ground in agony. Growls sounded all around, the disgusted eyes of every wolf trained on the bronze-haired vampire. Jane walked forward slowly, her face a picture of scorn. You were told to have patience, she hissed, as Edward writhed on the floor at her feet. You were told to sit down. You were told to listen. You were rude, arrogant, condescending and full of your own misguided sense of self-importance. I do not know why you were brought here, but I will withhold judgment until the end of the story. You, Edward Cullen, will not have a chance to interrupt again. With that, she bent down and ripped off his head. Jake, she addressed the alpha, would you ensure his body does not make trouble? If he tries to fight, feel free to rip his limbs off. I will keep this. She shook her hand holding Edward's head lightly, with me. He will have no choice but to listen quietly now. Perhaps he will learn the value of patience today. Perhaps. With that, she sat back down next to Seth, placing Edward's head her lap, disregarding the venom soaking her cloak. Jake grasped Edward's upper arm and hauled him to his feet. The large man stood solidly next to the headless undead, his grip never wavering. Silence permeated the room, until a peal of laughter rang out from her cell phone. Oh, Jane, Bella gasped, that was priceless. I'm so sorry I missed seeing that. Now that the whiny brat is quiet, I'd like to hear the rest of Jasper's story. If you worked so hard to protect me in Phoenix, if you were able to absorb so much bloodlust when I was practically bleeding out, and why did you try to eat me over a little paper cut? I didn't, Jasper replied, a smile in his voice. I lunged at you, thinking about draining you, to make Edward believe I was going to do just that. I didn't anticipate you being thrown into those dishes. Edward has never been particularly attentive to his own actions in tense situations. He's always too worried about what everyone else is thinking to think himself. Anyway, it was time to get you away from Alice and Carlisle. Edward was feeling more ambivalent toward you every day. It wouldn't be long before he allowed his bloodlust to overwhelm his fascination with your silent mind, and his delight in being put up on a pedestal by you, and by Carlisle. Rosalie knew that the wolves had come to La Push once more, and that you would find your place with them. We had been told that when the Quileute started shifting again, it would be the right time to free you from the Cullens' influence. Your mates would find you, as they had been destined to. Since the moment of their creation. So, I made it seem as though I could not control myself, and for the next 3 days I enhanced every emotion in Edward that I thought would make him finally leave. Rosalie continued to lobby for our departure, and for you to remain human and here. Finally, we succeeded. I don't think Carlisle and Alice knew you were mate to the Volturi, they only seemed interested in your gift. I am sorry for any pain our leaving caused you, Bella. But it had to be done before Carlisle and Alice convinced Edward to allow you to be changed. You were not meant to be changed by anyone but your mates. Jasper finished talking and looked around the circle, searching out the emotions of the Quileute. He felt hesitant acceptance and burgeoning respect from most present. There was still a great deal of curiosity, though, and it was Jake who finally asked what everyone was wondering. You talk about being told about this and that. Someone sent you to watch Carlisle and Alice. Someone also sent you to protect Bella. How do we know you're telling the truth? What proof do you have that Carlisle and Alice are evil? I may not like the Cullen family, this one in particular, Jake shook Edward's body. But I never saw any evidence that they were actually evil. Who are you getting your information from? Rosalie spoke up then. I met my mistress when I was a newborn vampire. My story is not a pleasant one. And I will not share it publicly, except to say I was brutalized and violated until the only thing I could do was lie in the street and bleed to death. Carlisle found me and changed me that night, intending me to be Edward's mate. I did not trust Carlisle from the first. There was something calculating in his manner that caused me great unease. It was when my born year was nearly over and I thought to exact revenge on the men who had killed me, that Artemis, daughter of Zeus and Leto, appeared to me. Did you just say Zeus? Bella choked out. As in the king of the gods, Zeus. The one with lightning bolts. Yes, Rosalie smiled at the incredulity in Bella's voice. She would be just as disbelieving if their roles were reversed. And probably not as polite about it. That Zeus. And Artemis, one of the virgin goddesses, and twin sister of Apollo. Among other things, she watches over the wilderness and wild animals, and is the protector of a girl's virginity until marriage. She also concerns herself with childbirth. She helped me to kill the vile men who killed me, and then asked me to watch and wait. Jasper was sent to help me a few years later. Did she send you, too, Jasper? Marcus asked. He was very interested in this story, and inclined to believe what the two were saying. It made sense, and confirmed what he suspected about Bella. He could hardly wait to see if Dimitri found anything in his search. He heard a soft knock at the door and went to retrieve the meal for Bella. He listened to Jasper's response as he helped his mate to recline and began to feed her. No, it was not the Lady Artemis who sent me. I did not meet her until several years after I had joined the Cullens. I was sent to meet Alice by Heracles, the son of Zeus, Heracles, whose corporeal form descended to Hades upon his death, while he himself ascended to Olympus and was welcomed among the gods. Heracles, who served penance after Hera drove him mad and he killed his own children. Is that who you mean? Keys's voice was awe-filled. Reading about the 12 labors of Heracles, or Hercules, as the Romans later called him, was one of his favorite things to do. He collected as many original Greek texts as he could over the centuries. He even had a few artifacts from the end of the Mycenaean age, the time in which Homer set his writings. Yes, where he reconciled with Hera, married Hebe, and became the protector of mankind. Jasper related his past to the assembled group, and told them how Heracles had taught him how to feel a soul's purity or evil. After that, it was a simple matter to feed. I was no longer overwhelmed with the surface emotions of my prey, and could be sure that I was taking someone who endangered everyone around them. He heard the wolves rumbling a bit, but their emotions were more shocked than angry. He supposed that he could have used a better description for his targets that prey. Sorry, he apologized, looking at Jacob. I am a predator, after all. I suppose I could refer to those I have taken in a more sensitive matter, but they really were the most vile individuals you can imagine. Anyway, when I met Carlisle and Alice, I found their souls to be void of any good. They were uncommonly skilled at controlling their emotions. I began to suspect that they were being protected by whomever they serve, as you, Bella, are protected from Alice's visions. But Alice saw me in her visions, Bella corrected. Since before your birth, Yamos, son of Apollo, grandson of Poseidon, and a seer himself, has kept you from Alice's sight, R.O. Say explained what they had recently learned. For your safety, he allowed her to see you while we were in Forks. When we left, the wolves protected you until your mates came. When they found you, the healed that Apollo gifted you with at birth strengthened, and you are hidden from her once more. Alice can't see the wolves? Charlie asked. He had been listening with the same skeptical fascination as everyone else. He still didn't understand what Bella had to do with any of this, but he was interested in learning as much as these two knew. We were told they were shrouded. We don't know how or why, Jasper replied. But it is the reason we brought Esme and Edward here. They do not have anything to do with the others' treachery and we hope to free them both from that influence before it was too late. Carlisle will know we are gone by now. Esme's voice shook, and she kept her eyes on her hands, wringing them in worry. He told me what would happen if anyone found out about his deceit. He will kill millions, Jasper. He collected samples of the disease that killed Edward. He swore that he would unleash it again if I did not keep his secrets. The room exploded in a cacophony of growls and upraised voices. Wolves and elders jumping to their feet in anger. Edward's face was contorted in a silent mask of horror. In Volterra, Bella's stomach revolted, and she barely managed to keep her food down. The king's eyes were black with rage. Keys grabbed the nearest seat, and hurled it against the wall. The crash sounded loudly through the phone, and Esme jumped, burying herself back into Emmett's side. Jasper met Rosalie's eyes, seeing in them her deep anger and concern. He wasn't sure what to do about this latest revelation. The emotions in the room were a maelstrom, and he was caught unprepared for the onslaught. He couldn't calm himself at the moment, let alone try to help anyone else. Enough. Jake's deep voice boomed through the chaos, rife with the authority of the Alpha. Every sound was cut off immediately. In Volterra and in La Push. I think that answers the question of whether or not Carlisle is genuinely evil, Jake stated into the silence. Jane, I think Edward will behave if you put him back together. He might actually have something useful to contribute, now that his hero has been exposed as a fraud. We also still don't know what any of this has to do with Bella. Jane came forward, and began the process of reattaching Edward's head. While she did that, Rose addressed Jake's last statement. We were not told why Bella is important. We didn't even know who we were waiting for until we met her. After we met her, Artemis and Heracles came back to us. They told us about the shield she had been blessed with, and to be especially careful, since that would be enticing to Carlisle. They told us that it was important that she was not changed yet. After Bella united with the kings, we were released from our task, and told to bring Edward and Esme to you so that Alice could not see them. Esme. Edward's voice was a little raspy, but clearing quickly. He nodded to Jane warily, then knelt down and took his foster mother's hand. Look at me, please. Esme raised her eyes to his. And he saw the tortured soul she always tried to hide. The rest of the room waited, watching as the young vampire showed patience and understanding for the first time since they had arrived. Carlisle, even if he were to release the virus, could not cause the pandemic he threatened you with. There is a residual immunity in the population now, as well as antivirals that will lessen the effects of the illness. Plus, the CDC has completed its study on that strain of flu this year, and could very likely make a vaccine if they needed to. There is no need to worry. He noticed the stunned look on the faces of the Quileute and shrugged self-consciously. I have been to medical school twice, and enjoy keeping up with the latest developments. I look a little too young to actually be a licensed physician, though. He turned back to Esme, who whispered her thanks for his information. Mother, what else are you keeping hidden about Carlisle? Can you tell us? Or maybe just show me? He winced as her hands squeezed his tightly. Horrifying images of countless beatings and abuses flooded his mind, beginning with that terrible day she first slipped, and ending just a few weeks ago. Edward's eyes lost all traces of Amber as rage and sadness flowed through him. He barely felt Esme let go as he roared his soul-deep feelings of anger and betrayal. Emmett stood, placing Esme behind him protectively, and readied himself to contain his coven brother. Jasper gasped at the intensity of Edward's emotions, but they were easily subdued, especially with the human blood he had just ingested. He pumped concern and love into Edward, until the younger vampire's eyes turned amber once more. Edward placed his hand on Emmett's arm, asking him wordlessly to move. Then he gathered Esme up in his arms and rocked her, rubbing one hand up and down her back softly. I am so sorry. I know why you didn't tell anyone, but I wish I would have known. You are the strongest, most loving person I have ever met. And I am honored that you think of me as your own. I am honored to call you my mother. Esme sobbed, collapsing against Edward, who sat with her curled into his lap. He looked at the others in the room, whose expressions ranged from understanding sympathy to outright confusion. He caught Jasper's eye, and tipped his head toward the distraught female he held. Seconds later, she was completely relaxed and looked almost asleep. Then he began to speak. I am everything that you called me, Jane. Since the moment I was changed, Carlisle treated me as his golden child. I knew that I was favored more. Even the rest, more even than Esme appeared to be. It has made me arrogant and self-important. This is what I have just learned. Esme has never known anything but abuse at the hands of the men who should care most for her. The beatings she suffered from her husband in her human life were bad enough, but the horrors she has endured for decades at the hands of Carlisle are beyond despicable. They are not mine to disclose. But he is everything you say he is. He looked at Jasper and Rose. Everything and more. He held Esme with threats against human, as she told you, and also against me. She has loved me as her own. And he used that love to keep her quiet. Jacob, For some reason he had sought an alliance with the Quileute since before we moved here the first time. He taught us all to feed an animal so that the facade of goodness would secure him this alliance. He also thought it would help us to blend better in society, so that he could seek out humans with potential gifts. Through the speakerphone, Arrow's voice came through clearly. This is not the Carlyle I knew, but it does not surprise me that he became this way. When one is so full of narrow-minded zeal, it is easy to manipulate them and lead them astray. But to what purpose? Bella asked. And how could he know about the wolves before even coming to Washington? It was his first time there, wasn't it? He never mentioned traveling in the West, before then. Edward answered. That was the first time we had been here since I was changed, but he had been in North America for quite a while before he changed me. He never did tell me when he arrived. But from bits and pieces over the years, I'd say he had been here since at least the early 1800s. Maybe even sooner. Then there was plenty of opportunities for him to have come this way, Old Quill said. Especially if Arrow was right, and his restraint is a gift. Animals were even more plentiful in that time, and he did not need to keep close to humans. He could have gone anywhere and everywhere. The history has no mention of him before Ephraim's time, but we do not record every encounter with a cold one. We can sit here wondering all day, or we can finish this meeting and enjoy what is left of this holiday. The sisters and the rest of the coven are waiting to meet Bella. Arrow was not accustomed to waiting for information. He usually just reached out his hand and took what he needed. I think it would be best to bring Jasper and Rosalie to Volterra with us, Master, Jane said. The two blonde vampires nodded in eager acceptance. Seth has told me the words of his spirits. And the looming threat is for us to conquer. It does not belong to the wolves. The issue here, it would seem, is what to do with Edward and Esme. The last thing Esme needs is to be in the middle of a confrontation. If what Edward has told us is true. Sue spoke up, looking at the vampire still held on Edward's lap. And I also think she needs the care and compassion of a female, for once. Nothing I have heard suggests that she has ever had that. Rosalie shook her head, feeling slightly ashamed. It had certainly never occurred to her that Esme would need that, even with her own terrible experience. She also was sure that Alice didn't have a single compassionate drop of venom in her veins. Jake sighed. He was not sure how much help the tribe could be to a vampire who had spent all her time hiding. Never glancing up or raising her voice above a whispering quaver. Yet something compelled him to ensure her comfort. Then Edward will stay here also. It seems like it would be cruel to take him from her. And I don't think he'd be very welcome in Volterra, hey Bells. Bella chuckled as all three of her mates growled lowly, no, Jake. He wouldn't be very welcomed at all. Sorry, Edward, but my Matt S would probably make what Jane just did to you seem like a paper cut. Jasper choked back his amusement at her choice of words. If he was interpreting her words and tone correctly, it appeared that Ella believed that he had been protecting her. When he and Rosalie arrived in Volterra, he hoped he would be allowed to keep on doing just that. That was interesting, Bella commented, when Arrow hung up the phone. We didn't really get an answer about what anything has to do with me though, did we? We did not, Marcus agreed. We will have to wait and see what Dimitri finds. In the meantime, let us go meet the coven. This is also a good time to begin to find out what else has changed, beyond your eye color and strength. We will test your durability later, under carefully controlled conditions, but let us see if your speed has increased. Bella grinned. In that case, I guess we'll be testing my balance and coordination, too. I'm sure that, before all of this, I could have somehow managed to trip even while lying down. Going faster will only increase the chances of face planting, unless I got vampiric grace and reflexes. We will catch you if you trip, my darling. No matter how fast you are going, we will never let you fall. Keys linked his fingers with hers and led her out the door. Arrow darted past with a mischievous grin. Catch me if you can, Bella, he cried, darting down the hallway. Ella's eyes could follow his movement with ease, and she concluded that she would have no trouble keeping up with him. She squeezed Keys's hand quickly, before letting go and dashing after Arrow with a laugh. They arrived in front of a large set of double doors scant minutes later, Arrow's happy laughter mingling in the air with the chime of Bella's giggles. Amused at their antics, Keys and Marcus ran up behind the two. The faces of all three kings held pride at their mates' increased speed, and newly found agility. Indeed, Bella was as light on her feet as any vampire they had seen, seeming at times to glide along the floor as though she were riding the wind. The quartet entered the throne room to find their coven gathered expectantly. The large chamber had been restored in the few days they had been gone. And 4 ornate velvet-cushioned armchairs had been set on the dais in place of the destroyed thrones. Felix stood with Leah near the edge of the assembled group. They walked forward and greeted Bella, Leah pulling her into an uncharacteristically friendly hug. "I am so glad to see you," the she-wolf whispered very quietly, hoping the vampires couldn't hear her. "Aside from Felix and Dimitri, you're the only one who doesn't smell like I've been drowned in cotton candy soaked in caramel. At least the underlying bleach odor is gone." Felix and Arrow, who had been close enough to hear, coughed to hide their laughter. "I apologize for taking Dimitri away from you so soon after your arrival, Leah," Arrow began. "I hope you 3 were able to have some time alone when you arrived. I understand Felix took you with him last night. Did you enjoy playing Santa?" "We haven't really had much of a chance for all 3 of us to be together," Leah replied. "Between my jet lag and meeting the coven, there really wasn't time before you called him. It was really nice to go with Felix last night, though. My dear, we will have to ensure you have some time to yourselves. After we have introduced Bella here, Marcus and I will continue the search Dimitri has started, while he spends time with you and Felix. I know Keys will want to check in on our prisoners. In the meantime, Felix, why don't you show your mate the gardens? The air out there has a crisp freshness at this time of the year, and I'm sure she will appreciate its purity." Arrow smirked at his large guard, and waved the 2 of them away. Marcus placed his hand around Bella's waist, pulling her close to him, and addressed the rest of the vampires. "This is our mate, Bella Swan," he introduced. "Bella, this is our coven. Heidi, Renata, Santiago, Chelsea and her mate, Afton. They are our senior guards. Alec, you have met, he is one of the elite guards with Jane, Felix and Dimitri." He led her down the line to where 3 beautifully regal females stood together, watching them approach with wide smiles on their faces. The vampire with long black hair stepped forward, hands outstretched in welcome. When Bella extended her own arms, they were firmly gripped, and then she was pulled into yet another hug. "We are so pleased to finally meet you," the beauty exclaimed, pulling back and studying Bella intently. "I am Didym, Arrow's sister by birth. And these are my coven sisters, Sulpicia and Athenadora." At first, Bella was shocked at the warm welcome. Had Arrow mentioned having a sister? She couldn't remember, although the name seemed familiar. These 3 vampires stood apart from the guards, and carried themselves with self-assurance and authority, as though they had more of a claim to this coven and place in this throne room than anyone except the kings. Bella stepped back to regard the 3 females. Didym was a beautifully feminine incarnation of Arrow. Daintily built, she had dimples when she smiled, and her red eyes shone with happiness. Athenadora was a statuesque blonde, whose hair was pulled back loosely, with ringlets tumbling riotously down her back. Her figure was slim, with a small bosom and narrow hips, and she held herself proudly. Sulpicia could only be described as voluptuous, with an hourglass figure. Her dress molded itself to her ample breasts and tiny waist, and the rich indigo color of the fab. Rick complimented her Titian hair and crimson eyes. It occurred to Bella, then, where she had heard of Arrow's sister before. Carlyle had said she was Marcus's mate. Of course, he had also said that she was dead. She remembered Marcus telling her about their longtime companions, when he sat with her in the bathroom to calm her down. Bella's eyes narrowed slightly, as she moved to stand between her mates and the vampires who were quite obviously their former lovers. The female vampires were every bit as lovely as she had feared, and she did not want them in the same room as Arrow, Keys and Marcus. These 3 examples of feminine grace and perfection had spent 3 millennia with her mates, and were still in the castle. Athenadora's eyes widened as she heard Bella let out a low growl, and wah. Tched, her eyes darkened until they were nearly black. Backing up several steps, and hoping she did not make things worse, she spoke quickly to Keys. "She's been changed. Keys, what is going on?" Her heart beats still, but she is obviously thirsty. She stopped when Bella hissed and drew closer to Keys. Immediately, her 3 mates surrounded her, each placing a hand on her body. "Easy, Amata," Marcus soothed. "We are here for you." Her change was unique, he continued speaking, keeping his eyes on Bella. "She is so much more than we are. Dimitri has been instructed to find information. Arrow, has she not been fed yet? Look at her. Her eyes are black." Sulpicia was just about to command a meal for the angry newborn, when Bella interrupted with a snarl. "Don't talk about me while I'm standing right here." Her tone was fierce. "Arrow, why are they here? I don't want them talking to you 3. You're mine. Arrow swallowed his pride at his mate's possessiveness and spoke softly to her. Dearest, he asked, does your throat hurt? Come, let us go and find you a meal. Bella tried to swallow, and found she could barely do so. It's dry, like it was before. She never took her eyes off the three females who had been too intimately familiar with the three brothers. In the back of her mind she knew she was being irrational, but she couldn't help herself. And I just ate. Keys moved swiftly, tossing his little tay over his shoulder before she knew what was happening. Ignoring her angry hisses, he strode from the room, calling orders as he went. You are all dismissed. Athenadora, Didymu, Sulpicia, thank you for watching Volterra in our absence. I am sure Bella will greet you more cordially when we have taken care of her newborn needs. Evidently we have been remiss. The rest of you, go help Dimitri, if you can. Except you, Alec, I want you to check on our two guests in the dungeon. I will be visiting them soon. Marcus and Arrow were at his heels as he continued to the kitchens with a spitting newborn held tightly over his shoulder. He stopped at the entrance to the kitchens and turned to Marcus. Would you see who in there is able to donate today, and then send the rest on their way? Bella, he said sharply, as Marcus disappeared through the door. You are thirsty. If you do not calm yourself you will end up draining someone. If you do not calm yourself, I will take you to our newborn quarters and you will be fed under supervision. Arrow glared at Keys. There is no need for that, Keys. This is our fault for not at least offering her blood before we overwhelmed her with so many new vampires, especially with the sisters among them. Since waking she has been extremely controlled. Just have a little patience. Dearest, he stroked his hand down Bella's back, where she still struggled over Keys's shoulder. Calm yourself. We are here, the three of us. We will not leave you. Calm yourself, and look around. There is no one else here. Marcus is just through those doors getting you some blood. Come to me, precious one. He lifted her to her feet, trapping her arms between their bodies. She hissed, but was beginning to listen to him. She sniffed the air before taking a quick inventory of the space around them. She did not see anyone else, just as Arrow had said. Ceasing her struggles, she looked up at her black-haired mate with tears swimming in her darkened eyes. Arrow, what's happening? I was fine, and then, they are beautiful, Arrow. And they had you before I did. Years and years and years. And I know I'm being unreasonable, but I can't help it. She was so nice, Arrow. Your sister. But Carlisle said that Didymu was Marcus's mate. I know it's not true, but she was his, and he was hers, and they were yours. And you're mine. Mine. Her heart was racing and she was panting in her agitation. Bella, you are thirsty. That is the reason you are feeling this way. We will tell you anything you wish to know about our former companions. He paused at Bella's growl, after you have fed. But know this, we are yours. There will be no one but you, never, ever again. You are ours, and we are yours. No one else has any claim on us, no matter what happened before you came to us. Now, let you go into the kitchens and see which of our staff has been courageous enough to brave our feisty newborn mate. He transferred her to his side, wrapping one arm firmly around her waist, and walking through the door. The castle kitchens were large, with commercial appliances, sparkling clean countertops, and a large wooden table set in a dining area. Seated at one of the chairs, was a portly man of middle years. Wearing a large white apron. His arm was set over an old-fashioned bleeding bowl, and crimson liquid flowed from a cut at the crease of his elbow. Marcus turned with a smile. Bella, this is Lorenzo. He is the chef here, cooking for the live-in staff. Gardeners, housekeepers, and such. He will be providing your first meal. He is nearly done. Lorenzo bowed his head. It is an honor, my lady, to do this for you. I hope I can provide you relief. Bella's eyes were dark, and her throat was dry, very dry. She had heard Edward talk about a burning thirst, but that was not the case with her. Mostly, she felt like she was having really bad PMS, total, uncontrollable hormonal shifts. If that meant she was thirsty, then she would wholeheartedly drink and hope that she could regain control again. She really didn't like feeling this way. She leaned her head against Arrow's arm. Thank you, Lorenzo, she responded, pushing all her will into sounding polite. I hope I don't have to do this too often. But I am grateful to you for your generosity. There will always be someone willing, as often as you need, my lady. Master Marcus has told us that you are their mate. The staff here is delighted. And we will assist you in any way we can. He pressed a cloth to his arm, bent his elbow, and stood slowly. Marcus passed him a muffin and ushered him out the door. Her mate returned seconds later, and poured the blood into a wide silver chalice. He passed the cup to Arrow, who held it to Bella's lips. "Here, dearest, drink," he implored. Bella inhaled, and her eyes widened. "It smells like toffee and chocolate." She tipped the cup back and drank greedily, but without spilling a drop. When she was finished, she let out a long sigh of contentment. That was so much better than a $5 latte. If I could have Lorenzo every day, he would replace my morning coffee. She heard a resounding laugh from the doorway, and she turned swiftly to find Lorenzo standing with a very amused Marcus. "They see." Hef's grin still split his face as his laughter died down. "On the days when I cannot give you blood, my lady, I will make sure to make a latte for you before your first meal. You have not had a proper coffee until you have had coffee in Italy." Marcus came to stand next to her. "I assume, Amata, that you will not need more blood than this right now, although it is a pitiful amount for one so young. I have asked Lorenzo to see that you are given the same amount twice daily for the next little while. He will collect from our donors. Let us know if you ever need more." Keys stepped closer to his mate, ignoring yet another glare from Arrow. He could see now how small Bella's lack of control had been, but it had been several hundred years since they had deviated from their very effective way of handling a newborn. Newborn quarters in Volterra were stark, with a small transom window at the ceiling for light. The walls were smooth gray stone, and a newborn always had a single vampire responsible for them through their adjustment period. Meals were delivered through a wall slot at regular intervals, and there was no change in the surroundings until the newborn was ready. Color, light, texture, sound and smells were introduced slowly, so that the new vampire was not overwhelmed. The responsible vampire would then start to escort the young one around areas that were carefully deserted. Both vampires were brought to meet the baby, and humans were added to the surroundings last. It was all carefully controlled, and produced a rational and well-behaved vampire in about 10 months. Even then, the recently turned were supervised until at least their second year. Slip-ups happened, but they were very, very rare. Keys watched his mate with soft eyes. He had not wanted to train his Bella like that. He just saw an overwrought newborn, and hoped that the barren surroundings would help her to calm herself. They may well have, but he should have had more faith in Bella, and more patience. He could not blame Arrow for being angry. "Are you feeling better, my darling?" he asked gently. "I am sorry I was impatient. It seems to me, Keys, that is just the way you are." Bella softened the words with a hand on his cheek. "Just as Arrow seems to be a bit of a geek, who makes odd references to, what was it? Oh, chainmail-clad superheroines. And Marcus seems to be your opposite, with a never-ending supply of patience. But next time, could you try to remember that I don't like being ordered around? I've never really had to answer to anyone, my parents being the way they are, and it has made me quite independent. I am feeling better, thank you." Keys pulled her in for a hug. "I will try to remember. The loss of control you just exhibited was the only sign of a normal newborn reaction you have had. I guess I was thinking that it was just the beginning. I will not again forget that you are unique in this life, and should not be treated like any other." He sighed, relieved, when he felt a kiss softly placed against his chest. Bella turned to Marcus. "I'd like to meet the ladies again. I heard Keys say he wanted to visit the dungeons. I don't want to go down there. Maybe I can try again now that I'm feeling more myself. Perhaps it would be better if there were just one of us with you," he suggested. "If you felt the same way you did before, then at least you would only have to watch out for one of us. Instead of all three, I could go with you, or Arrow could. The decision is yours. Didn't you tell Leah that you would give her some time with Dimitri, Arrow? Why don't you do that, and Marcus can come with me?" "That's okay, right? Entirely okay, dearest," Arrow smiled. "Enjoy your time with Didim and the others. They will not think anything of the earlier encounter. It was entirely our fault and they know it. Keys and I will come to you in a couple of hours. The live-in human staff have Christmas Day lunch here each year. We will escort you and introduce you to them. They will be happy to meet you." With that, Arrow and Keys left, and Marcus took Bella to meet their former companions once more. Video ends here. Wait for next part. Have a good day. Be right back soon.